Good evening, all, and good evening, chat. You all know me, the good old Geek, and I am joined right from the very start by Dark Knight of Hibernia. Hello, DK. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you?
I am, well, I'm not 100%. I've got a dodgy tooth that's causing me a bit of grief, and I'm currently waiting for the painkillers to kick in. If they don't, you'll probably see me grimace a few times on stream because it's not good. It's right there.
Oh God, is it a wisdom?
Just in front of the wisdom teeth. I had a filling fall out last year, and I never got it dealt with. It started to get a bit swollen.
Yeah, honestly, I need to go because I haven't been to the dentist, I think, since before the lockdowns and stuff. I never had the chance to.
I haven't.
Yeah, I'm starting to worry, to be honest.
Yep.
So,
yep. I say hello to Mage's Musings. Hello to Adam Pender. Halakars here. Shadow and Sons here. Grumpy Old Slans here. Lots of regular names. And we're also about to be joined by Monsieur Elfbait. Hello.
Buongiorno, signor.
Your sound is good from the start tonight as well, Elfbait.
Well, it helps if you actually know what to look for and have it set up.
That is true.
Yeah. Oh. Right, so before we get into any form of topics and whatever, let's have a little chat about what we've been doing over the last week, gaming-wise. I was pleasantly surprised to see how many people joined in my Fighting Fantasy stream the other night, so I'm going to be doing another one. Probably not tomorrow, probably Friday, but we shall see. I'm thinking of doing a second attack at the House of Hell and see if we can get a bit further this time. Saturday, I know DK, the game I'm playing with you, you've gone weekly now with that, which meant I couldn't make it this week. I ran my AD&D game, and my group finished off UK 4, When a Star Falls. They were quite sensible towards the end, managed to avoid some potentially deadly encounters. Played it cautiously, hid from a couple of red dragons, which are at the end of that module, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth, talking of teeth. Their cleric got knocked down to 0 hit points because of a bit of bad luck, but they survived. They traded the shooting star, they got the books, and they won. And I need to do the XP for them. That's what reminded me. I haven't done their XP yet. I should have done it yesterday. And Monday night, the guy whose house we were going to go to still not feeling too great after he had COVID last week. So I ran our backup game for that group, which is my MERP game for them, on Monday. And I'd done tons of preparation. The previous session had been quite a Tolkien-esque session, a nice journey through the Barrow Downs and across the Downs area to the south of the Barrow Downs. It's Cardalan. I don't know specifically what you call that bit, though.
Is the Barrow Downs? That's where they get rescued by Bombadil, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
They're going from Bree to Tharbad. That's the basic route. First session was all in and around Bree. Second session was the journey from Bree to the town of Metreth, which is about 2 days west of Tharbad. Right. And I thought when I was preparing the session, I was thinking, okay, I'll maybe prepare a little bit, maybe some potential fisticuffs for Metreth, but I'll do most of my preparation regarding the lore of Tharbad, because Tharbad by 1640 odd in the Third Age is well and truly sinking into the marsh. It's a bit of a cesspit. There's no real order there. There's all sorts of factions vying for control. So I started doing all preparation on that. But no, they, I said, talking about what they were doing in Metreth, they decided to go on a pub crawl. And that the entire 3 hours of that session in Metreth was me describing the innards of each of the taverns, the entertainments, the people that were hanging around, and them getting into drinking competitions. And that was basically the entire session. They didn't do much else. So, it was one of those where the players just go completely off on their own tangent.
I mean,
anyway, it was still fun. DK, how did the game go on Saturday?
Well, the weeb showed back up. via the powers
Yes.
of God. They met up with a Jon Snow wannabe. They got booted out of the Elven Dome. They met up with Elven version Major Richard Sharp, and they got sent to a dungeon where they met leprechauns, Guinness Knights, bog zombies, Guinness oozes, and nettle mounds.
So this is fantasy Island, basically.
Basically, yes.
It's
Yeah.
you taking the mickey out of all your own culture.
Yeah. And the British, and soon we'll move on to the French.
Yes, yeah. I may guess it's not the most sensible of games. It all goes a bit silly, but it's a breath of fresh air. It's a bit of fun, and I'll be there for this Saturday, assuming it's all going ahead.
Woohoo!
It'll be after a game of Call of Cthulhu, which I'm running on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think Ginger's playing in that too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Gingerbeard's playing, and some others who frequent. Omanal will hopefully be playing as well. Some others who frequent the channel. Elfbait, have you been doing any gaming of the last week or so?
A little bit of miniatures gaming, but my 5e game went a third week with no session. This time it was my fault. I just was too tired. Our neighbors moved away suddenly and left their dogs in their backyard. And those dogs have been barking all night. It's really sad, actually. We had to call animal control today because these dogs are getting super skinny, and they just the people just left them. They moved and left their dogs behind.
God.
Well, they've actually moved away. They've actually moved house.
They've moved away and left the dogs
the dogs behind.
So the neighbors and I and my wife have all kind of teamed up to take care of them until we had hoped that it was just temporary. You know, like maybe they were settling their new house or whatever, and they were coming back and checking on them. But yeah, it's a mama dog and her pup, and they're beautiful pit bulls, and they're super nice. I mean, I've never interacted with them, and I walked right up to them. But yeah, they've been keeping me awake to the point where I was so tired this morning I actually had to call out of work. It's like I can't. I have to be able to think and process. And after 2 nights of that, yeah, my brain just wasn't firing on all cylinders.
Is there any chance of you taking them in, or?
I would love to, but we already have a dog and a cat, and it's just. Yeah, I mean, these dogs have been raised as outside dogs, so I really couldn't do it.
Right.
I will say, on an alteration of an old quote, you can always judge the measure of a man by how he treats dogs.
Yeah.
Not wrong, because dogs have been specifically bred to be our companions. Mm-hmm. They're bred to have trust in us.
They are man's best friend, and if you hurt them, may whatever sky wizard you believe in have mercy on your soul. That's all I'm going to say.
Clearly quality dogs. Like I said, I've never interacted with them before once, and I went into the yard today to water and feed them, and there was no aggression. There was just happiness for a person to be there. Yeah, and so it's really unfortunate.
I mean, I fully believe you. It's very rare to get a genuinely bad dog. Much more common to have a bad owner.
Yeah.
And I think dogs are beautiful animals.
I would take them in a heartbeat if I could.
Yeah, like my 2 months after my last dog died, unfortunately, like before the pandemic, my brother-in-law actually literally rescued a dog. The house had flooded out, and he had to he got all 6 of the litter out, and he had to squeeze the water out of it to keep it alive. And the guy who owned the litter said we could keep 1 or 2 of the dogs. And because my mom just lost our last dog, she thought, why not fill the void with a new one? And that's how we got her.
I'm a fur boy, so I have all kinds of animals. So
when I moved in with my wife, I inherited her dog. The dog was already 8 years old at that point, but she accepted me straight away as the man of the house, and she was absolutely wonderful. We had her till she was 15, so she had a really good innings. And then my wife, I know she didn't want another dog at the time because of the memory of her first dog had been her companion from her childhood. Me and my wife, we moved in together when I think she was 20, 21, and the dog was already 8 years old. So she'd gone through her teenage years with this being her dog. But lovely dog. But eventually, when we had our kids, and our son was showing quite a lot of fear towards dogs, we didn't want that. So we looked into what types of dog would be best with children that were 5 and 6 years old. Well, Jake was 5 at that time. Holly was 8. Holly had no problem with dogs, but Jake did, and he was only 5. So obviously, some bigger, potentially more boisterous breeds were probably not ideal because we've only got a little house. So we went for a spaniel, half Springer, half Cocker, Sprocker spaniel, and she is the softest, quietest, most loving. The only time you ever hear her bark is when she's really excited. We open the back door for her, and she'll let out this pathetic little yap, or when somebody comes to the door, and her bark will be a. And that's it. That's how you know someone's at the door. You just hear this.
Yeah, my current dog is a Chihuahua Pomeranian Jack Russell mix, so he's barks at everything and he's high energy. And
yeah, mine's an actual Cocker Spaniel as well. She, like, the last dog that died was a Cocker Spaniel as well, but she was timid. She hardly said a word. I don't even remember hearing her bark, but this one will yelp every time someone comes home, and she'll be all excited, and she'll bark at people she doesn't know. She's just a very kind of skittish dog, but I still love her.
Yeah.
I love that breed.
We agree that dogs are awesome.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
Don't worry.
Oh man.
It's been keeping me up all night. These dogs in distress, they're working all night, and so it does not make for a good night's sleep. But... No,
neither did my wife's cough. So you might hear when she gets back in a bit. If she probably go to bed about 10 o'clock because she hasn't slept much, and you hear in the background this constant. I might have to mute myself a little bit, but it's very frustrating. Anyhow, good to see chat talking about dogs. I'm just going to respond to Mage's musings. Says here, group 2 are 1 session into Forget-Me-Nots, and we're playing it once a fortnight because it's Saturdays and I work alternate Saturdays. So they're 1 session in, and they've gone in a completely different way to the way that you lot did. So Mage's musings group went in very, very directly. This lot have been much more circumspect, but they're now every bit as insane because if that adventure, whatever happens, it goes horrible. And I agree completely with your next comment about what should happen to people who abandon animals. But I'm not going to put it on screen because it'll demonetize me straight away.
Yeah, no, I saw that one as well. And then, like, someone else said, well, what if they've they can't afford to keep and I would just say, just put them in a shelter or find someone else who can take care of them. Don't leave them behind.
There are ways to get dogs rehomed. And that should be, if you genuinely can't keep a dog, then you have the responsibility to at least try to get them rehomed.
Yeah, this street that I live on is pretty tight knit, and there are already a couple of folks. I mean, within days of not seeing anybody coming and going from the house and hearing the dogs in distress, 3 or 4 neighbors were helping the dogs. And there's a couple of them who expressed an interest in maybe taking like the puppy or the mom. And so there were options, and we know for a fact that it's just a matter of a moving situation because we do have contact with one of the neighbors indirectly, but it's been confirmed that there was a marital split. Husband went one way, wife went one way, and the dog stayed behind, which, it's an unfortunate situation, but
But I would say the main thing that I hate about it. Yeah, the thing that I despise most about it, besides cruelty, is it's just cowardly. You got to
Yeah.
own your responsibility. That's just it. You agreed, and you have to keep your word.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
about- that's-
Uh, my pets are a part of my family. I mean,
Yes.
they're kin. Even my cat. Yeah.
Wow, you go. Wow, brother. That's
No, I
Just
love
want to
my
say,
cat.
just to say hello to a few more people who have joined the chat. Hello, Calstaff and Malaki and L, and who else has joined since we started and commented? I think I've said hello to Grumpy Old Slime. There's Duralumin as well. So welcome everyone. We're up to 16 people, and we've just been chatting about dogs and stuff. Because Elfbait is struggling for sleep at the moment due to
yeah.
neighbours.
Yeah.
I won't derail and go on about my personal issues with our neighbours, but that maybe for another stream. Maybe for another stream. I'm sure I've told DK about her, but yeah, we have. She's perfectly nice, but there are things she gets up to that sometimes there's things she gets up to that we don't agree with. But anyhow, let's get on to the topic. Tonight's topic, and I am hello, Mar Hawkman. Hello, Dean Powell. DM James has thought, oh, welcome, well done, DM James. We're going to talk tonight about the power gaming versus role playing dichotomy, as and something known as the Stormwind Fallacy. Have you all heard of that?
Yes.
I have not.
If I remember correctly, and I may be wrong on this, but isn't the Stormwind Fallacy is that you can role play through optimization, like through mechanical optimization.
The Stormwind Fallacy basically says that breaking the game into people who can role play and people who can optimize, and role players, people who are good at role playing being bad at optimizing, and people being good at optimizing automatically being bad at role playing. It's basically saying that is a complete fallacy.
I would agree.
Okay. My problem with the Stormwind Fallacy is the amount of people who fling it around without, in an effort to score internet points, without actually reading the proper details of what they're replying to. Because I will say now that it is possible to be good at both. It's possible to be bad at both. It's possible to be good at one, bad at the other. But if you tend to favor one in the way you play, in terms of your preference, it tends to be at the expense of the other, which doesn't make you necessarily bad at it or good at it. It just means that your play style tends to lean towards one or the other, or a mixture of both. You can be a mixture of both. We're all on a scale, but we've only got so much in terms of focus, in terms of what's the word I was thinking? I was trying to get in. When we play a game, we have our moment in the spotlight and our focus, and if we shift those towards the whole power gaming side of it, we tend to lean away from the role playing, and vice versa. Doesn't mean you can't, it just means some people won't because of their own priorities. Priorities is the word I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's a matter of tendencies versus absolutes.
Yes, absolutely.
I've played with some pretty power gaming people who also role played excellently, but that's not a common situation.
It certainly isn't a common situation, because in my experience, every single out and out power gamer I've played with has been a bad role player, or at least hasn't wanted to role play. Everything's been about shoehorning in the power for their character, sod everybody else.
Yeah.
That tends to be the problem. It tends to be an innate selfishness. I'm not saying that out and out role players can't be selfish, because some are. Some will try and hog the spotlight in terms of role playing spotlight, but I find it more often with the power gaming types.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on this, DK?
I just like the way that what I've seen to notice, because I haven't played enough old school to notice this, but I feel as though this whole Stormwind thing is a fairly recent phenomenon, like 3.5 onwards.
It's 3.5. It first appeared in a message board dedicated to either 3rd or 3.5 edition.
Yeah,
So
I'm not saying that this
named thing,
Yeah, no. I mean that the phenomenon itself, because like obviously in the old school you'd had these types, but usually when things like this become phenomenon is that they keep cropping up again and again and again and again. And I just don't get the vibe that like old schoolers really encountered this problem all that often. Because
we had power gamers, we had people who wanted to play the most powerful characters.
Oh yeah, obviously,
at all times.
But you also ran into people who somehow always managed to have
to get 18
that character that was stacked, and even if it wasn't statistically stacked, he somehow had like just the right magic items that some
at all
DM
times
somewhere had given him in some campaign. And
yeah, but that's different. That's not so much.
It comes from the same place.
Oh yeah, but it's kind of a different, because that's just more cheating. I suppose Stormwingers will, or like, what we call power gamers would try to game the system. So it's still, then gaming the system is like, trying to legalese bullshit your way through, basically trying to cheat without actually being legally accountable for cheating. So it probably is the same intent. So I suppose.
I'm curious to see what the other points in the conversation are, so I don't want to dive too deep. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
James here, he's calling himself a role play the right way, because that's the name of his channel.
Well, he called himself something similar before.
There were no builds in TSR D&D, and the power gamers in those days, the power gamers would be the ones who would turn up to gaming sessions with very high stats and the best armor money could buy, and
they're also the ones who would really argue and fight over magic items a lot.
Yes, they
were. They were they had to have that item because
the ring of protection.
It fit their build in their head, because that existed back then. People were still looking forward to finding, I want to have my paladin with his +5 Holy Avenger. He's going to have his field plate. He's going to
have his shield, his +3 shield, his +3 plate, his ring of protection.
Because all their characters ended up being pretty much the same.
I mean, and I do want to make the point that it is important when you make a character that they are viable. Max makes this point a lot in Legion of Myth, that when you create a character, the character should be viable for the purpose that you are creating them, which means a fighter should be able to fight. A magic user should be able to use magic.
But cleric should know how to turn the undead.
But there's a big difference between being viable and going over the top with it. What I want to say here is, for example, you come into a session, a role player might say, or someone who doesn't lean towards power gaming, I want to play a flashy swordsman. How can I do this and be effective? That's absolutely fine, because they've gone in with the intention of the idea of the character first. Whereas a power gamer,
exactly how I built my 5e Battlemaster.
Whereas a power gamer will look at the list of weapons, skills, feats, or whatever in the game, and try and construct their character the other way around those optimal options.
Now I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and let's try and we often kind of snub our noses at the power gamer, but let's kind of steel man their argument a little bit, because at the end of the day, we're here to play a game. and the objective of the game is to win. You go into the dungeon, you kill the monsters, or you conquer domain level play, or you find the magic item, you defeat the big bad, whatever. Then we'd have other people who, because of this phenomenon of building up a lot of power, we'll say, to be more than just playable, but also, optimized and efficient, they'll have people who'll do the exact opposite to be different. They will intentionally handicap themselves for the sake of being different. Now, who is more, who is worse in that instance? The one who deliberately tries to be as efficient as possible, or the one who wants to be as, I would say, obstinate or bumbling as possible?
I would
Who is worse?
I would say the second one, because they are trolling the group.
I'd say it's all comes down to intent. I mean, honestly, because I have been that player who has made the thief with the absolute minimum dexterity, but I'm also a role player, so I will play that character. Maybe he is a thief, but he's not necessarily the best thief, because he's a thief by circumstance, or because that's what he can do in life. Or
it's not a problem. It's not a problem as long as the character is still viable within the game.
Yeah, it's in old school. It's hard not to have a viable character because you have ability score minimums and stuff like that. But yeah, it's also like I said, I kind of want to see where the other points are going before I get to, because I can think of some other examples that aren't
like Mage Musings.
related.
Yeah, like Maze's musings point out, it's not about who's worse, rather the one who reacts the poorest things. And I agree. I don't like doing the which is worse, because that's a whataboutism. It's not appealing to virtue. It's appealing to it's basically damage control or hurt minimization. You should be emphasizing virtue, like who is the best at the table. But I was doing that as a means of trying to steel man this position, even though I don't fully agree with it. I think you should just play your character as intended and do your job in the party. That is the real way you optimize your character, by being efficient within a team.
Yeah, I think the main thing comes from the main issue with power gamers is power gamerism is often goes hand in hand with other bad behaviors, bullying, table bullying, being rather obstinate or even loud at the table, and just acting out of turn.
Well, that
trying
ties
to barrel the rest of the table.
That ties in with Mage's Musings comment here, that is a trend that he's seeing regarding power gamers, that they also expect the DM to cater to their character abilities to minimize the weaknesses. And that is very much a trait that there are
guys are going to complain, well, sure, you put that out in front of us because my fighter is not they're also the ones who always want to accuse the DM of intentionally catering to their weaknesses.
They're always paranoid that the DM is out to get them, which sure, there are DMs like that. They do exist. There are malicious DMs, but most old school DMs that I've seen are very impartial. And in fact, are impartial, leaning towards helping the players win because they want the game to keep going.
I would say I'm a little bit like that. If I'm unsure of the correct mechanical way of dealing with something, I'll come up with something that will generally lean towards giving the players a good chance. Certainly, if I think the players are engaging with the game. If I think the players are being creative, playing their characters well, then I'm going to give them a better chance of succeeding. It's because you want the game to progress, and as a DM, you ultimately want the players to enjoy themselves. And yes, certainly in some games like Call of Cthulhu, you are descending towards the depths. But that is part of the enjoyment. In a game like D&D, you're attempting to become heroes, and the general aim in a game of something like D&D is to become a hero. And that is, I want my players to enjoy the satisfaction of gaining a level, of getting a new magic item, but I want them to earn it, and I want them to make the game enjoyable for me as well. And if they do that, then I will lean towards them. because
I don't feel the
that's
need.
all part,
I don't
all
feel
part
the
of being a DM.
Yeah, I don't feel the need to flex on power gamers or punish them or whatever because I'm the most powerful player at the table. I could just say, okay, well, your character's dead, so get out of my game if they behave poorly. So it's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
No.
I'm a big fan of letting the other players deal with problem players, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it tends to weed itself out. Now, I'm not afraid to approach them directly and talk to a problem player as well. But yeah, a lot of times in the past, the power gamers get sorted out by the rest of the players. They're either asked to not come back because they're making the game no fun for anybody, or if they're a little bit more amenable to actually working with people, then they will talk amongst themselves and come back to sort of, all right, I'm going to play my character as optimized as I can, but I get what you're saying. They'll at least concede that point.
I've seen this happen. What Grumpy Old Slan says here: players who didn't like the stats of their character play them suicidally in order to reroll and hope for better stats. I have seen players dig in and derail adventures because they didn't like what they rolled.
I think I've mentioned this method to dealing with those kinds of players. Like if you don't want to kick them out, like we'll just say for the first time that they do this, here's a way to disincentivize that kind of behavior, at least that I think might be useful, is if a player does that and you know why they're doing it, just say, okay, we'll roll up your characters at the end of the session. After everyone else has done everything, you won't get XP, you won't get to level up, you won't get gold, you won't get loot, and you're going to have to wait for 3+ hours to get a new character. And if they leave, well, then that problem kind of sorted itself out now, didn't it?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, and I'm just going to make I've just thought of something I haven't. Okay. Let's make another something to come up a bit later. One thing I do want to say is a lot of people do conflate power gaming with the idea of min-maxing. And I will say that they are different.
Yeah.
How so?
Min-maxing is power gaming is basically trying to use all the rules that are there for you and channeling as much of it as possible, and trying to find various combinations, sometimes pushing the rules into very grey areas and arguing the toss, being a little bit rules lawyery, to become powerful in order to break the game. Min-maxing is typically done with point buy systems, where you end up, for example, with a character. I mean, the extreme
highly
example,
specialized.
Highly specialized. You get
taking as many flaws as you can to give you as many build points.
Yes.
Can.
Taking the flaws and you end up being really, really bad at most things in order to be extremely
really good
at one or two or maybe three other things, and that and yes, it can cross over with power gaming, but they're not essentially the same thing. In a point buy system, in WotC D&D, a min-maxer will often use point buy to have three stats that remain at 8 and 3 go at 15.
Okay,
that's what you're
saying. Essentially, power gamers are ones who try to minimize weakness, whereas min-maxers try to maximize strength. Essentially,
power gamers
are interested in accepting weakness usually, whereas min-maxers will accept a weakness to get extra power.
Yes, that's the main difference.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
Hello, Squirrel.
Really funny, and I remember reading a post somewhere that Game of Thrones reads like Martin's GURPS game.
It is.
And like all of his characters are like super awesome, and then have some really horrible flaw that would balance out their extremely good skills. So like,
unironically,
dwarf.
I even unironically had this same conversation with someone how like Game of Thrones is just Martin taking history and his GURPS game and smashing them together, and that Tyrion is probably his self-insert. It was one of his PCs. I firmly believe that. You know,
I mean,
he married
it's a
Stu.
good example, though, if you want to see the result of min-maxing. It's like, look at Tyrion. He's like
Mm.
super, super
Noble.
charismatic. He's got lots of money. He's really knowledgeable, but he's a social pariah and a dwarf. In a world where that's a negative. So,
Yeah.
but no, yeah, I've played with min-maxers and I've played with power gamers, and not all of them have been bad. Some of them just know the system better. I especially in point-buy systems. I used to play Champions, and one of the guys who ended up in our group had been playing Champions since it was being play tested by the guys who made it, and he had played in their games, and the amount of power he could squeeze out of the same point budget was insane. He could make almost a 500 point character out of a 250 point character, and yeah, he could double his points just because he knew how to just engineer that system. It's no surprise that he was also a Boeing engineer. His brain just worked that way.
I've just started to notice this as well. Just could we also say that that sense? I think I finally figured out why this is just a 3rd edition onwards phenomenon, because 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition incentivize system mastery. If you know, from AD&D 2e to a lesser extent, but really AD&D 1e and before, it didn't matter if you mastered the system. All that mattered is how you played with your character. It wasn't like you couldn't white room theory craft the perfect build in almost every situation or whatever. It didn't matter because the dungeon master was well within his purview to just within the dungeon have a curveball that you would never have seen before. Look at Tomb of Horrors. Just look at the concept of the Tomb of Horrors. It doesn't matter how, if you'd never heard of the Tomb of Horrors before with 5e, the completely alien, as unlikely as that is, I'm going to start crawling through the green gargoyle. Okay. You watch him go in, and about an hour goes by and nothing happens.
Yeah, I think you make what is as far as D&D goes. Yeah,
yep.
I mean, it's probably 3.5 on, but there other systems have really allowed that since almost as long as D&D.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say hello to Gingerbeard, who is joining us.
Hello, Ginger.
Hello.
Good evening, Ginger.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Have you been gaming? We've all talked about our gaming and our weekends and stuff. What about you?
What did I do last weekend?
You're gaming this weekend, aren't you?
I am. Double bill. I mean, at least I'm only playing. I don't know how you managed to do it, your Geek, running it and then playing in a game afterwards.
Well, I can chill out playing in the game afterwards. That's the idea.
If he were playing my Lion and Dragon game, he probably wouldn't. Not saying he wouldn't last on, but after playing running a Call of Cthulhu game, then going into my Lion and Dragon game, it's a completely different metric. My Last Sun game is far more chill,
Gingerbeard, I mean, I resemble your character at the moment in Call of Cthulhu, Ginger, because I am currently waiting for Cocodamol to kick in.
Oh.
This tooth, man.
Yeah, the tooth. No. Anyhow, Ginger's in my Call of Cthulhu
British
game.
and their horrible teeth.
Horrible teeth. My teeth aren't too bad.
I'm just messing with you, man. Yeah, Brits have on average better teeth than most people like to think. Better than most, anyway.
Yeah, mine aren't too bad. It's just I think it was the last time I went to judo last year. I hit the mat quite hard, and one of my I've got a filling at the back that dislodged, and I just haven't been asked to get it sorted, and now I'm paying the price.
Yeah, well.
Anyhow, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I'm going right. Next point I got here on this topic of min-maxing and power gaming is that power gamers are the sort of players who are more likely to play their character sheet and play the numbers. They are less, and they are more likely to plan their characters' lives out to the nth degree. They're the ones who are less likely to react to in-game events and in-game triggers and in-game experiences, because they've got their ideas set in stone about what they want to achieve.
Yeah,
they tend to be specialists and
Mm-hmm.
kind of inflexible and not interested in things that don't let them show off.
Yeah,
because a lot of the power gaming mentality is proving something to the other players and the DM, and you're just not going to speak up if you don't have an opportunity to do that. So.
Yeah.
Generally not interested when it's not their characters, not an opportunity for their character to shine. And they tend to focus on trying to guide the game towards what their character is good at, rather than letting the game flow.
Yeah, I mean, it can be good to have them there for that. You know, we've even seen instances of fiction and the like where there's, you got the sword guy, and after the talkie guy is done and it didn't work, it's the sword guy's turn.
The thing is, though, that in that instance, the sword guy has allowed the talkie guy to have his little bit in the spotlight.
That is true.
And if the power gamer does that, there's not a problem, because people are getting their turn at the table.
Yeah, when the bard fails to convince the prisoner to voluntarily give him what he wants, then you get the assassin to stab him in the kidneys.
It's also important to take a moment to say that the talkie guy can also be a power gamer. He can have all of his social skills maxed out.
Oh yeah.
I remember one time I tried to build in 5e a character who
build
knew every
characters.
skills. I know, but this is back when I was starting in the hobby, man. I wanted to make a character who was a coward, so he knew every skill and any spell, because he was a bard, would give him the ability to hide or run away or deceive his enemies so that he'd never get fought. He never had to fight. That was his shtick. That's what he would always do, but never got a chance to play him. But I suppose it's for the best.
Yes, sounds like it. All right, so hey, go on then, Ginger. What's your general opinion? Have you heard of the Stormwind Fallacy?
No, I have not.
It's the idea that you are power gamers are bad at role playing. Role players are bad at power gaming.
I want to say I don't necessarily agree. I'm just trying to think up an argument for why not. Not I'm just being a dickhead.
It's fine not to agree, because as it's written, of course it's right. It's the but it's the idea that we have personal preferences and leanings, and people who tend to enjoy power gaming tend to focus on that at the expense of focusing on role playing. It's these tendencies I've written down here. It is. I mean, it is a it's a generalization. I could say, for example, Dutch people tend to be taller than all other Europeans. That does not mean that every Dutch person is taller than every British person, but it just means on average they are. Because Dutch
are
people
you saying I'm
average,
Dutch geek?
I'm saying Dutch people are on average the tallest people in Europe.
Yeah,
I know you're a freak. So am I. I'm short. You're 6 foot. You're a full foot taller than I am.
Yeah, I'm 6'5",
you're Irish, and Irish people are meant to be little leprechauns in striped socks around singing.
Fuck you!
It's a fact.
I'll get you me pot of gold, sir.
We even have cereal boxes that prove that here. Come on.
Oh, why would you bring up that craptacular fucking cereal, man? That's just sick.
I love that cereal. We're gonna fight. I'm gonna get an airplane ticket right now.
Fine. If you don't mind dealing with Irish shivs known as broken bottles, man, bring it on.
But I'm just saying I believe that in general terms, power gamers don't tend to favour role playing, and vice versa. Don't tend to.
Yeah, the tendency is. Yeah,
it's the tendencies. Yes. What?
Uh,
I think this is taking it to the extreme.
yeah.
There's hogging the table spotlight, and there's hogging the real life table.
No, no, I agree, because the DM should be allowed to have more refreshments than anyone else.
But yeah, and all DMs are power game. Yeah, of course we are. Yes, yes. But we are. The most
I
powerful
have
people
punished
there.
a player for trying to bribe me as a DM before.
Why?
I'm an incorruptible DM.
Oh, bullshit!
You brought me a half
are.
rack of soda, and he had been really edgy, lobbying to like get his character, and he'd like been schmoozing me for several sessions, and so I put his character in prison.
A cold and cruel DM you are, sir.
And then I promptly shared the soda that he gave me with the rest of the table.
I assume he didn't get any.
Oh no, I'm not that horrible. He's still my friend.
Fine.
Come on, I'm not a dick.
You put his character in jail, dude.
That's a dick.
Cold.
I'm not a dick.
I'm thinking what your alignment would be for doing that.
Lawful evil.
I'd say lawful neutral.
No, he put him in prison. If he were lawful neutral, he'd just say, "No, you keep it for yourself."
It was attempted bribery. I mean,
it was a cyberpunk game. His character had it coming. He tried to open fire in the umbilical connection between a shuttle and a space station. Yeah.
Okay. If he's trying to bribe you to keep his dumbass alive,
Interpol was not going to let hull breach go unpunished.
Oh yeah, if the dude's just trying to.
When you're firing a 50 caliber revolver in a space station without frag rounds, you're gonna get punished.
Then
if the guy is doing that,
I would say now you were lawful good doing what you did then.
Yeah, it was just fun, and honestly, he wasn't mad because
yeah. Okay, that's fine. No, it's I understand. If the dude's only trying to bribe you to keep his dumbass alive, then yeah, fucking kill him. I don't care.
Yep, he got sent into the Death Valley Free Prison.
All right. The only thing worse than that type of spotlight hog is the thespian wannabe who has to turn everything into a player event instead of character actions.
Oh, Lord. I've had more of those than power gamers, and
that's kind of the point I was driving at with the person who intentionally that this is kind of what the thespian would do. Like, they would intentionally make themselves weaker to be more special, but all they end up doing is being more special.
No,
why am I not special?
Because I
no, you're not.
You can have the fighter, the base fighter who wants to just be the actor. Like every engagement in combat is some scene out of a Shakespeare play. Yeah.
I have never seen fighters do that shit, man.
Everybody, and
I have never seen that shit from a fighter, man. It's usually bards or warlocks. I've never seen it in paladins either. I haven't seen it. I've seen it in warlocks and bards and sorcerers, but not paladins.
The aforementioned agile swordsman is often a really good candidate for doing that especially since The Princess Bride came out. They either want to be the Dread Pirate Roberts or Inigo Montoya.
Or Inigo Montoya, yeah. Honestly, I'd rather be Inigo Montoya of the two because he's a lot more interesting.
Paladins do have a tendency to play the long-winded, chivalric, everything is some sort of courtly speech.
I will admit to being that player who will often try accents, and I do enjoy role-playing conversations in games, but only to a certain point.
Yeah, I will usually do it to establish a character and then slip into regular speech. I do that when I'm DMing too. The first engagement with an NPC might have the Sean Connery accent, but I'm not going to do that for the entire session because nobody needs to hear that.
I mean, I will say now that I have run about 9 months of horror on the Orient Express, and I did manage to keep the Belgian conductor speaking in a French accent the whole time.
Really?
And it got very John Cleese at times.
I have a buddy who wants to do accents all the time, but every one he does, no matter what his character's nationality, ends up coming out like some drunk Russian. Aren't you Hans Kleeman? And you're
See, that sounded German to me, but
Yeah, that was German. Yeah.
that is German, but his German will sound like a drunk Russian.
my Italian accent, when they were in Milan and Venice in Horror on the Orient Express, my Italian accent didn't go anything beyond ciao. After that, it was pathetic. And
all of us Americans love to do really bad British accents for every character.
I love going John Cleese with the French accent. Me personally,
I attempted to do a Welsh accent when my group playing in a Gaslight game went into Wales, and I think I sounded like I came from India. That was terrible.
I think you've got to take a run up at it, like from Wales.
Yes, I think boyo is about the only thing I got right. I mean, I could do the rest of this stream in my over the top French accent if you wish. You see,
it's bad even in Call of Cthulhu, taking place in the U.S. It's really hard not to just slip into those stereotypical American accents. For
mais oui, that is right.
Sheriff, no matter where, got a Southern accent. You were in New Hampshire.
God damn, I'll do declare, boy.
Parfait, Monsieur Elfbait. I mean, the only American accent I can even get close to is the Southern accent, and that is poor.
Well, they say that British actors say that is the easiest American accent to do.
Well, golly gosh.
I like playing in your Call of Cthulhu games, you old geek, but yeah, you do the Southern States accent quite a bit.
Well, it's the only American accent I can do. I can't do any of the others, so they all come from the deep south.
There are places in my campaign world that where everything else is Europe, and then suddenly you get to some coastal town and everybody sounds like they're from Maine. But
see, to most Brits, the American accent, it's hard for us to pick the differentiations between obviously the deep south is easy to spot, but the rest of it is we have to really concentrate to notice the differences.
See, Geek is able to do the Southern accent to a degree because it's the true inheritor of William Shakespeare's voice, and as a Brit, it's the only voice he can do.
Yeah.
Well, so William Shakespeare was a redneck, was he?
I am from the Pacific Northwest, and we tend to not have much of an accent as far as the U.S. goes. But I remember used to do summers in New York, and these people would be telling me, "Oh, where's your accent from?" I'm like, "I'm the one with the accent."
Well, everyone has an accent, dude. Everyone does.
I know, but I'm like talking to some guy from Long Island, and he's like.
I mean, in the British Isles, we've got quite a lot of accents crammed into quite a small area. You can go 20 or 30 miles, and the accents will completely change.
By blocks, man. It changes from house to house. What are you?
3 streets over, and you've got a different accent.
I mean, where I'm from, there's the Birmingham accent, which is known for being a bit dim sounding. But if you just go 5 miles west and go into what is known as the Black Country, then that accent around there, which is Warsaw, Wolverhampton, and Dudley, and that sort of area, is on a whole another level, and that's just 5 miles away.
Yeah, definitely we need Sax just to keep this stream on topic.
No.
We're on topic. We're talking about the role playing side.
We are not having the fun police. We are not going to have the fun police German telling us what to do. A pox upon him and his lawful evil house. Begone!
I think Saxius will be back for the next stream. He's moved house and he's got various things to set up before he joins in the stream.
Sorting out his internet. It's because he lives too close to the Welsh border where he's moved to. So the internet is probably super shit there.
2 sheep tied together with a string. But
Oh.
My light has just got out. That is Mrs. Geek going to bed.
Oh, so now the Call of Cthulhu game starts.
Well, we could start playing Call of Cthulhu, and I could start really disturbing her. But
Way
no.
too much sun.
Anyhow, let's go back to the
Pretty
topic.
sus.
I'm going to say, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue. I did warn you that she might start coughing in the background. So there's nothing wrong with power gaming if the whole group are doing it. It has to be something that the whole group are on board with, because then the DM is able to react to it and is able to, if the DM is on board as well, then it just becomes a very competitive game of D&D, and some people like that. Some people play it that way.
Pro level D&D.
It just becomes an arms race, and yeah,
So
if
quickly
people find that
take care of that problem.
If people find that satisfying, then fair play to them. There's no wrong way to play, but as long as everyone in your group enjoys it, I certainly don't. But in any one group, I think it only takes one power gamer to imbalance the group as a whole. I think the main problem with power gamers is when you get one of them in a group of people who aren't as focused on it as they are.
Yeah.
It causes headaches for the DM more than it causes headaches for the other players.
Weirdly, I was going to say my longest running 5e campaign that I played in went totally opposite to that, where like myself and one other player basically had to end up power gaming because a lot of the other players were quite new and had fallen into kind of I don't want to say shitty character builds, but yeah, they'd chosen options. Their characters had made life choices which did not lend themselves well to surviving in the later stages of the campaign.
What game was it?
It was 5e, running through a bunch of the published adventures. But yeah, basically because a lot of the newer players had, fine. Like the whole idea is we wanted them to have fun. We wanted them to keep playing D&D. So yeah, if you want to like reskill your fighter into a mage, which now means you're a shitty fighter and a shitty mage, you could do it because that's what you want to be. But that then did mean that a couple of us, like more experienced players, felt we had to power game just because there were so many times that we would just end up in shitty situations in the dungeons that we just needed.
That's the only real time you can make a character feel quite irrelevant is in 5th edition, is if you just pick bad multi-classing options. It's one of the reasons I don't like multi-classing is it's a trap option for those who want to do it how I think the right way, but it's a big carrot for those who want to play the game mechanically. It's I think I'm not a fan of multi-classing unless it's done purely for thematic purposes in 5th edition.
Yeah.
So Ginger's group reeked of depression and bad life choices,
both in game and in real life.
Chat have gone quiet. We appear to have killed their conversation somewhat.
I mean, like the problem, like I've noticed with like it's saying like with the white room theory crafting with multi-classing, it's I think my main problem with it, I don't necessarily have a problem with players trying to break the game, because at the end of the day I can just veto it as the DM and just say no, it doesn't work that way because I'm the dungeon master and I said so. But I think the main reason why I have a problem with it is that they're going in with a certain expectation that they want it to work. Or it basically it's like a clash, and I think that's my biggest problem with it, is that when you go in saying I want to be a paladin warlock multi-class, it's like, okay, are you going into this because it's a thematic choice, or because you think it'd be more interesting to the world building, or are you just doing it because you want to be able to short rest chain smiting like everybody else wants to do? Like, and they'll go yes to the latter. Like, okay. And you just kind of roll your eyes to it. And it's like, all right, you're going to dip into Hexblade, so you can attack with your charisma. You're gonna get Eldritch Blast. Okay. And it's just boring more than anything. It doesn't even make me mad. It's just boring.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've told you all before. I'm playing a warlock currently in a 5th edition game, and I have intentionally chosen to try and avoid the standard warlock options. And it is making the character.
This is your Satyr one. This is your Satyr, yeah?
Yeah,
right.
And I'm trying to pick entirely sort of enchantment and illusion and trickery type stuff. And it's quite difficult to pull off. It is quite difficult. It would have been so much simpler, but very, very boring just to go Eldritch Blast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I imagine you're probably also going to be playing up like a musician as well, because that's what satyrs often do.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
It would have been even simpler to just go bard and be done with it.
I didn't want
you wanted to be interesting. Like, I can't imagine why.
The last game I played a bard in the last game. And no, he wasn't the standard trope of being a bard. He was a performer trying to raise money to repay somebody who he had wronged.
I've never run into anybody who's played that bard in any of my games ever.
No, I haven't either.
I feel it's a grossly inflated stereotype because I just haven't encountered it ever. In 40 plus years of playing the game.
No, Malaki, I would never be that heretical. I'm just saying that he could have played a bard, and it would have been a lot easier for him. I am not in any way advocating for it. You wash your brain out with soap, sir.
See, I like bards because I like the idea of them being a storyteller and a provider of lore and someone who delves into information.
Yeah, the only one I ever played was a storyteller. He didn't play a lute. He didn't sing. He was just some grizzly Northman kind of,
a skald.
Keeper.
A skald, yeah.
I played him more for the jack of all trades ability that they had back in AD&D. Than
I don't. Did they have jack of all trades in AD&D?
No, but by their very makeup, they did a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they had they had thief skills. There were some combat.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
Now it's an actual thing.
Well, see, here's the problem. At least back in the olden days, for a bard to get really powerful in AD&D, like in AD&D 1E, it took a long time, and even then, it was middling.
Unless
like in terms of how powerful they're
making a bard, and you just make a bard.
I'm okay with them I wouldn't just hand them the bard. I'm just like, no, if you want to play a bard, you got to earn it. You got to earn it. And besides, but now the bard is just, it went from jack of all trades, mediocre at everything, shit at most things. Like, he was just kind of meh at most things. Now he's just the best at everything. And it's kind of infuriating, Mark
Hockman is still here, but I was going to bring in a little later on the topic of how people react to playing in games where there are no classes as such, and whether that gives more opportunity to power game or less. And I don't tend to like games that have no classes at all.
I don't either.
I tend to see classes as professions, which is pretty much what they were in AD&D going back. And I mean, I guess Call of Cthulhu doesn't really have classes because you've got that big long skills list, and essentially you can.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to be, because a class. I'd go one step further, Geek. I don't think classes are professions. I think they're archetypes. They represent
in D&D,
something.
they definitely are. In most class-based
in other games.
I tend to see them as professions as well, ways of life.
Well, yeah.
Right, but but that's why classless systems, like it would feel weird to put them into like Call of Cthulhu, because you're not playing an archetypal style game. You just aren't. You're not playing a quasi mythological game of heroism. You're playing ordinary people, and it wouldn't make sense.
Closest Call of Cthulhu has is actual professions.
Yes.
Yeah. Archaeologist, historian,
I think Call of Cthulhu's
driver.
got the balance of class versus skill just about
Yeah.
right. In that you've got the flexibility to pretty much have the skills you want, but you lean a certain way based on your character's profession. But you've still got tons of flexibility, and it is. I would say, even though it is a very, very fragile game when it comes to survivability, if you've got a character where you put tons and tons of points into weapon skills, spot hidden, and psychology, then you're pretty much power gaming Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, because if you throw a Shoga at that player, if you throw a Shoga at them, they're gonna die. They're so dead.
You're gaming the adventures, right? As in progressing through the adventures, but it's impossible to power game in the traditional way.
L generally, like Joe saying, or L in the chat is saying, classes are fine, just don't mix skills with them. I generally agree, but I kind of have to feel the Steelman, the Thief, that you almost need the skills for them to make them somewhat viable.
Thief skills really aren't skills; they're class abilities. They're called
but
they're class abilities.
Yeah, but there should be perception, insight, persuasion, deception, like none of that. That go away. Just none of that in D&D.
And I agree with what he's saying. I think one of like 3rd edition On's problems is, and it kind of even started with 2nd edition, but it hadn't taken root. Introducing skills into a game that was never intended to have skills becomes very problematic, because it's really just not built for that.
As you say, at least in 2nd edition, they were secondary skills, which
you still had the non-weapon proficiencies.
That's what I mean. But non-weapon proficiencies were very much situational and largely lent towards flavor rather than functionality.
Yeah,
some of them were more useful than others.
By the time we get to
3rd edition had going for it, though, is a lengthy skill list. I think if you're going to bring skills into a game like D&D, having those skills split up in what they do kind of controls the power. Because right now, for example, you've got in 5th edition, you've got survival, which is this broad spectrum of things that you can do, and nature.
I have never seen anyone take nature or survival. They almost always pick, if they're going to pick
every ranger.
I know I've never, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've never seen it. But then again, I've never played with anyone who plays a druid or a ranger. It's just I've never seen it.
Down to a lot of your background stuff in 5th edition. Like if I'm playing some character from a rural area, I might take nature, because I probably know what plants to not eat and where the best mushrooms are to pick for supper. And
actually, no, I'm wrong. I did see one ranger and one druid in my first 5e game. I was wrong, but they hardly ever used the skills anyway. They never did. So
my current party is always naturing the shit out of my game. It's like, can I use nature to like? No, you can't use nature to tell if that nobleman is evil. How are you justifying that?
What? Oh, okay, yeah. If we're gonna say nature,
that's an exaggeration, but
I know, but like
almost that bad.
This ain't some psychological nature versus nurture thing, my dude. That would be insight, if anything, and even then, I don't buy it.
It would, but when they don't have insight as a proficiency, and
I know.
Can I try and read his breathing because of nature?
That's medicine for one thing, and that would be perception, really. But what were you gonna say, Ginger?
linking it back to power gaming, this is something like when your Geek said about the topic I was thinking about, because obviously when people talk about power gaming, we start thinking about builds and stuff, but there is that also soft power gaming element that sometimes I'm guilty of, especially. It's that kind of, you gently push away at the DM, you get them to give rulings that you can then remember. It's like, well, you arbitrated it this way. Gonna keep using that now.
Okay. Yeah. L chiming in saying, if you're going to have a big list of skills, why have classes? I completely agree. Like, I've gotten to the stage as a DM now. I'm just like, look, you have studied like if you're a cleric or a paladin and you study theology as part of your archetype or profession, you know what the statues of the demons look like. You know their names. You know what their cults look like. If you're a fighter, you know what military training looks like, what camps look like. As a thief, you know where to find the Thieves Guild. If you're a magic user, you know where the apothecary is and where the Mage's Tower is. You don't even need to make a skill check to find this stuff out. You just know where they are. Let's just move on with the game. And it saves
the hole in that is
so much.
You have to be able to trust your DM and other players to allow you to do that. And that generally comes with playing with familiar friend groups.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or in a time and place where there's a general concession that that's how things are done because we haven't had anything otherwise presented to us. Modern gaming and modern gamers are more casual to a great degree than we used to be when we had to blow the dust off of our moldy old tomes and decipher the ancient writings of Gygax.
Yeah.
And so there was a certain, because come on, back in the day, DMs were like omnipotent beings, and that was just, you just accepted that, right? The DM said so.
Yep.
You weren't going to argue with them. Nowadays, if it's not in print and you don't know anybody around the table, it's really hard to sit there and accept that when the DM says, no, your character doesn't know that it was a fair call.
That is a fair point.
I think modern games tend to move skills in there because, again, people want to know what their character can and can't do and don't want to leave it up to.
It's player facing. It basically is there to strip power from the DM, and maybe that's maybe that's the reason why. I don't know.
It has nothing to do with stripping power from the DM. It's allowing people to play casually and with strangers in a fair environment.
No, like that's inherent. If you go for it,
but it's not stripping power from the DM. It's.
I would disagree. Just the sheer fact that a player can make a roll, and the DM has to honor it. That inherently, the DM can say no. Like if he makes the check,
the DM. Well, no, it is written in the rules, though it is generally ignored by a lot of people. That what Andrew Hewson says here, it's still the DM's responsibility to ask a player to roll. It's not up to the player to decide.
I've had to remind my players, going back to I want a nature to see if the noble is like. No,
man,
I have to remind them that I will tell you, I will ask for a check. You tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you if a check is needed.
Hey man, at least to their credit, they're at least going in with the intent that the check is serious. I have seen players in a gothic horror game call for when a traumatic incident happens, I'm going to make a sanity save. And do you want to know why they're doing that? It's because the DM isn't punishing them when they do make the check and fail. They just start babbling incoherently, but they can still function fine. If those saves were failed and they were very, very punishing when you failed, as they should be, they would not be calling for them and would be doing everything in their power to avoid situations where the DM would call for the checks, but they treat it subconsciously as a big fat joke.
DK, you should join in my Cthulhu game on Saturday if you want to experience that sort of thing.
I may at some point. To be perfectly honest.
How do you end up playing with so many bad players, DK? It's
Like,
like,
man,
kind of-
but see, here's the thing.
Cthulhu isn't even written that way to have it be over.
Oh, no, this is in D&D. The DM super, because it's a gothic horror D&D game. He thought it would be a great idea because he saw it, and I know the YouTuber that pointed it out. It was Cal Kenko, I think it was. No. The way he's using the one that this YouTuber homebrewed from the DMG manual, right?
Mm-hmm.
He used a homebrew variant from a YouTuber, and I think it was called Ken Kenko or something like that. And it's dumb. It's so dumb. It's like a D20 saving throw, and I hated it every time it came up because we're not doing this properly. Because what should be happening is, you fail your save. Well, you don't have control over your character for the next 6 hours. Mine. Have fun.
I don't quite do that in Call of Cthulhu, but
some of the Call of Cthulhu scenarios are written as absolute shit when it comes to sanity. By the way,
Yeah.
there's one that Seth Skorkowski points out where you're like, you come into the dark bathroom and you see your reflection in the mirror. Check for sanity. And he's like, you drop a razor. Check for sanity. And then like at the end of the scenario, when the elder god appears, the scenario has nothing written in there to call for sanity. But it's it's like so the oomph of sanity. Even in published adventures, is highly debatable at sometimes.
It's very variable. I've noticed that campaign adventures, which are designed to be played over months and months and months, are a lot more gentle. But those that are written as one shots are absolutely brutal.
Well, it's like tournament D&D games. They tend
yes.
Do what I'd love to see if Call of Cthulhu would do it, like if I were running Call of Cthulhu, and I haven't done it yet, but the way I would do it is I would never tell a player to check sanity ever. I would make the check for them, and I would just secretly start passing messages along to the players to not tell them that their sanity is dipping, and they are to role play accordingly, but they are never to announce this. And I want it to basically be that they slowly start changing their behavior over time as they become more erratic. And that will heighten the horror because nobody will know exactly how other people will behave. If my sanity just dipped by 20 points, everyone is going to know and basically metagame. Whereas I would rather the horror to be more unpredictable. And that's the way I think it should be.
That's sanity mechanic is metagaming, though.
I know, but
DK, that's something I would try. I'd be tempted to try that in a face-to-face game, but it's probably a little cumbersome.
Oh, I know, online. Yeah.
It also relies on people being good role players.
Yeah. Well, I've been, to be fair, since
having
joining
any actual
the
idea
old school
or concept what insanity is really like.
Since joining the old school, I've been blessed to have really good players, and since I no longer play 5e, I don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore.
Anyway, we have diverted away from the comment that I pinned a good 10 minutes ago. I only pinned this because I wanted to say that I could do with one of those teeth right now. It would be really, really rather helpful. I'd quite happily saw that one out and put a tooth of Dalvanar in there and take that risk as to what it might do to me.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I see chat have sort of gone off on a tangent and are being entertained by Mage's Musings puppets.
Yes. Nobles are not all evil. Mage's Musings. That is a postmodern invention. I should go for check.
Right. I do want to say here. Next thing I wanted to come across. My next point was I'm not totally against optimizing a character for a purpose, but for me a key to being a good role player is to play a believable character and have the willingness to make suboptimal decisions that are consistent with the personality and goals of that character as the game goes on. I think that's one thing that defines the difference between a role player and a power gamer. The power gamer won't be as willing to react in a suboptimal manner to what's going on in the game as a role player would.
Yes. And yeah, definitely. That would, I think, be a big distinction between min-maxers and power gamers. Power gamers tend to be much more determined in their actions. Well, no, not hostile, but their nature as a power gamer is expressed much more by how they play, whereas a min-maxer is much more by how he makes his character. You know, because you can have a min-maxer who's not going to be a douche. And I guess you can have power gamers, but the power gamer definitely is not going to engage in suboptimal behaviors. That was what we were saying earlier. Anything that doesn't make his character shine, he's going to shy away from.
May I just say one thing, though? This is actually very interesting. And L is actually posted. Yeah, I was just about to say, what is suboptimal? Yeah, let's define our terms. What does suboptimal mean?
I mean, from its simplest, it is it's almost metagaming a decision in a game where you are doing something that the character would do, where rather than what a player who is trying to play the game might do. I've been running the Lost City for a group, and there's a few magic swords in there, and one of my players refuses to use them because he is using a sword that was a gift from his clan. And he has made he has named that sword, and he treats it with a great deal of love and respect. It is his family weapon, so he won't use another weapon, whereas another weapon would be more effective in the game. He's still effective. He's still doing the job as being a fighter. He's still a decent, strong fighter. Hits hard, decent armor, good hit points. He can still hold his own, but he would fight more effectively if he used
a +3 long sword or something.
My wife's fighter is doing something similar. She's got this cool magic sword, that even has the ability to cast some spells, but her character still prefers to fight with the refurbished battle axe of her grandfather, her character's grandfather, because he was an adventurer and she's carrying on the tradition, and just it means something to her. And she's like, it's kind of meta because it's also how she's explained just always forgetting that she has the sword that can do mirror image and blink.
I will point out, though, I will like to say as well, I will also like to say with Andrew Hewson, who says, as long as it doesn't develop into, well, that's my character do. I actually, on some level, I know what he means. It's like the thing that old schoolers will say, intelligence doesn't, if you have low intelligence, doesn't mean you're a dullard. It's just you're not an academic. And and I know one guy, EOTB, who says, if you insist on being a dumbass with low intelligence, I'm going to say you have 14 intelligence, just to avoid this stuff. Now, the reason why I'm going on this tangent is, what if there's a situation, like say a cleric, who must accept surrender, who must not engage in war crimes, and everyone else wants a certain NPC dead? I would say, well, my character will accept surrender and will defend surrendering people to the death. It's like, but dude, we want to kill him. I don't care, but we're gonna kill you. I know. Roll for initiative. Right? It's like, is that?
I just want to come back to what L's replied here. You're saying that that playing character makes you playing character in a certain way makes you suboptimal. What in this sense, the optimal way of playing that fighter mechanically is to pick the option that does the most damage, and that is the power gamer approach. And that's where power gaming conflicts with role playing.
And DK's example here with the prisoner taking, I mean, a power gamer is going to want to well, actually, let's back up. Power gamer is going to want to take that situation and act in that situation in whatever way is going to be absolutely directly the best.
Yes.
He's not gonna generally look for nuance or think 3 moves around. If killing the NPC is the easiest way to deal with the problem, he's generally going to do that, because power gamers also tend to be kind of brutally efficient.
Yeah.
And so they're going to kick down the door if they can and go into the room rather than spend time listening at the door or checking for traps or
They want to get on with it and get stuck in and show off their power.
As I was saying earlier, there's a certain like suite of personality traits that generally go with power gamers, and generally, but there's always exceptions, because we can have the good power gamer who is a power gamer but also role plays the crap out of everything.
Okay, what is the stats of Conan's sword and Conan the Barbarian? I would say it's a non-magical +1 sword. It's a sharpened sword that's +1 to hit because of how well it's made, and +1 damage because it's extra sharp.
It's whatever the DM wants it to be.
Exactly.
Because I could play that. You found an ancient tomb in it at an early level. You've had a magic item running around because you found some ancient king's sword in a tomb. And if I'm playing in a more magical setting, that might make sense. Even in Conan, that could make sense. You could be running around with this artifact for most of the game. You're just not really at a level where you can do anything with it.
No, I would say it's a bastard sword.
The sword may allow you to get into combat and deal damage, but you can't take it yet.
Well, our MERP session on Monday, the optimal approach going into the town where they went would be to find information. It could be said, for example, that if there were a group of power gamers, then the ones who were the characters that were best at interacting with other people and spotting things going on would have walked around town to try and gather information, rather than going into the pub and a character with a very average constitution getting involved in a drinking game with a group of Dunlendings and losing and being sick all over the floor. Which was it was fun. It didn't derail the game. It's probably delayed them for a day or two in the town, but it was an example of role play with an E over
role play with an L.
Role play with an L. Yeah. And it was fun. I mean, it was good. It was a good session, and they have made some potential allies in the form of some Dunlendings who respected him for attempting to down 6 pints of mead.
Omanal has shown up. Hello, Omanal.
Hello, Omanal. Where's Omanal?
He's in the chat. He's in the.
I appear to be a little bit delayed on the chat thing. Hello, Omanal.
No, the chat thing is delayed. If you're looking at the actual stream and then the StreamYard.
Right. Okay. I want to come back. Michael Stronghold mentions here. I actually don't play any clerics at the moment, but my point I was making about a few streams back about playing clerics that don't take healing spells is that I prefer to play a cleric who is proactive rather than reactive. If I'm playing D&D and have the option of having those sort of spells. I find it more interesting to bless a fighter before he goes into combat,
or blind people with light,
that sort of thing, rather than just patch them up afterwards, because I find that boring.
Geek, how can you be so dismissive of your cleric, the edgelord cleric, in my game?
That's down to the array of spells that's available to him in that game. Which are pretty much defined by alignment, and he didn't have any sort of protective spells because he's not a good guy.
Going back to the suboptimal comment real quick, a good example would be a power gamer's perception of another player's character too. Like I made a wizard, for example, who is a utility wizard. I didn't take any damage inflicting spells. It's all utility spells. Power gamer would probably consider that character suboptimal because I'm not out there dishing out damage, and I'm not taking care of things real quick. I'm useful as hell, but I'm not inflicting buttloads of damage and, taking care of the, basically mainlining it through the dungeon.
The next point I've got on my sheet here is that power gamers tend to have a habit of imposing themselves or attempting to impose themselves on the other players in the group, and you've just sort of preempted me there. They are the sort of, it's all right. They're the sort of players who are likely to tell other players what they should do for their characters.
Yeah, they tend to be strategists.
Yes,
or at least think they are.
They're war
Yes.
gamers, but they're trying to go in with a mindset of wargaming, which again, to steelman the argument, let's just be fair to it, that if you go in with the expectation of trying,
what do you think a wargaming mindset is?
well, I mean, I'm going off the what a lot of grunyards would say. Well, it's a war.
I'm very curious too, Ginger.
It's an out-and-out tactician, really. I think that's what you mean.
No, because a lot of us wargamers are absolute dunces when it comes to tactics.
Yeah.
Or care.
No. I'm trying to be fair to them.
GW was like, you just played it to have fun.
I played 10,000 points of Imperial Guard and just played to see how long I could last.
I don't know. I'm trying to be fair to them at the end of the day, because I don't know. It's just, from what I've seen on the Discords that I'm on, they're just like, we're here to play to win. And this kind of play to win mindset is slowly starting to take over the Discords I'm on, and it's partly the reason why I'm not on there anymore, because I just want to play for fun.
I think now that the wargaming comments is out of the bag, it's a good place to look at power gamers from the power gamer psychology mentality. I am not a power gamer. I will not take miniatures that I think are dumb in my army, even if they could give me every advantage. If that miniature is stupid, in my opinion, like it looks ridiculous or it doesn't fit my vision of my army, I will not take it. I ran Bretonnians for the longest time, and I took as many peasants as I could. Because I started playing Bretonnians in 3rd edition Warhammer Fantasy when they were scungy Burgundians and not French-skinned Arthurian knights, and I liked filthy peasants supporting snooty nobles. That sucked in 4th, 5th, and on edition, Warhammer, because it's. Peasants are crap.
I'm turning it back to my point on power gamers imposing themselves. My last experience of being in a group with a power gamer was that guy had an annoying habit of, when you gained a level, of standing over you and telling you what you should pick. Because all he would think of was what would be the most powerful for the party.
Yeah, they're also the ones who like to shuffle magic items like cards. The wizard gets this, the cleric gets that, the thief gets that. I'm going to take this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Omen Owl has joined the lobby, and I'm going to add him to the stream, which does mean that the stream will go on for at least another 2 hours.
Hello. Hey, Omen.
I'm sorry. Work actually tied me up that I couldn't even listen. So man.
It was not very productive, at least on my end, but it was very entertaining, if nothing else.
Here's the problem that I have. When we start talking about power gamers, we're also forgetting that these are optimizers. So if their role is to be a face, that's what they will do, and they will pick every skill to make sure that they can do, whether it's seduction or persuasion or anything else. So it's not necessarily that they're going to look at it from a tactical standpoint. They'll look at it as, I will optimize for whatever role I'm going to do, and I expect everyone else to do the same. And in some ways, the problem that you get with that is, and I know that this was with sorcerers, no, I've already built my character out to 20 levels instead of saying, what works the best for organically the game? And I agree with Elfbait on when you talk about Warhammer. You know what? I hate saying this. You can lose as many as you want, but if you have the best painted miniatures, you win. I mean, that's the way that Warhammer to me always felt like. But
And I'm always a loser because my 10,000 points of Imperial Guard were mostly pewter gray for the
Oh,
decades
man.
I had them.
Yeah, painting is for nerds.
No,
I mean,
I'm a miniature gamer who hates painting.
I'm not good at it, so I didn't even bother with it. I just play the models for Christ's sake.
so not to steal your thunder, Owen Al, but say in the hour and 15 minutes we've been discussing Power Game, I think we have sort of bounced off the difference between the Power Gamer sort of wanting to steal the limelight all the time and the optimizer who is just trying to be effective.
But I'm a recovering power gamer.
I know, and that's why I'm glad you've joined, because
I'm sure there's a Venn diagram there.
I mean,
He has come to the light, brothers and sisters.
Well, when I want to optimize, I optimize for whatever role I want to play. So it's not just a simple optimize like, oh, this will be good. It is like, no, how can I stack it up to the point that it almost breaks the game? And that's the problem of whenever you're looking at a lot of the power. It's okay if everyone's power gaming, but I think part of the problem is that in certain games like Pathfinder, there are optimal choices. And because people are taking optimal choices, and I think Saxius is unfortunate because he talked about that, is when they over-optimized, things don't become a challenge, or it becomes like glass cannons where it's either everyone dies or doesn't, and it removes the fun.
It becomes an arms race as well.
So maybe the point is to look at power gaming as a descent into darkness. The first step is min-maxing. And then when you take that too far, like wearing a ring for far too long, you turn into a power gamer.
Power gamers will become Gollum.
Cursed ring of power gaming gives you all the answers to how to beat the DM.
Well, and I think that's part of it is they want, and I think power game comes from two things. One is you want to be as super powerful as you can be, and then the other problem that you get is the lack of trust in the DM. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget about. It's because a lot of times I pick fighters and things. So if there was a trap, I wouldn't instantly die. I mean, a magic user is like, you blow, oh, look, you're fourth level, you fall 30 feet, you're dead. I mean, it's pretty much like, oh, whereas you're like a fighter, like, oh, okay, I'll pick myself up and I can still move on even though I'm hurt. And I think there's some of that aspect. The other part is, this is why I like skill-based systems more than some of the others, is because it is hard to optimize as much when it's a skill-based game, because how do I want to put it? Going up that next level, and I don't care what it is, takes so much more work. You start finding out that the characters, to feel like they're advancing, start broadening themselves in skill. It's a lot easier for me to, I'll use World of Darkness, to spend 3 XP to get several skills and say, oh, you know what? This is going to take you 20 to get to that next level. And they realize that there's a diminishing return. And because there's a diminishing return, you don't find as, I'm not saying you don't, they'll do the super optimization at the beginning. And I used to be really bad in that. Not only would I do that, is I would figure out what gave me the most XP or whatever, which would take me the highest. And so my character became really one-dimensional with the expectation that as we played, I would flesh them out more instead of saying, oh, okay. And I know Seth Gorkowski mentions that you don't want too much of a generalist because then they can't really do anything decently.
Jack of all trades, master of none, right? It's a cliche, but it's true.
Elfbait mentioned earlier the idea of us having a drinking game for whenever Call of Cthulhu is mentioned, and I think that's a really good idea. But I think Call of Cthulhu, handles skill development really, really well in that sense.
Do you want us all to die?
I said when the conversation turns to Call of Cthulhu, not every time it's mentioned. I'm not out to kill anybody.
Okay, all right. I misheard. Okay, Jesus, man.
Well, I just meant like taking like 20 points in flying. I'm like, well, you might be able to land the plane, but you can't do anything, for the most part, decently enough. Yeah, maybe you're lucky you don't crash, and that's about it. Like, no, yes, and it's one thing taking common skills at decent levels. It's those really weird uncommon skills you don't want to be like, oh, I have a little bit in there. Like, oh, we're all gonna die. You know, but that's the other part I think too is
You're all going to die anyway. It's,
I,
it's the nature of the game.
the question is when, not if.
Yeah.
You know, but what was the you know, the problem that I have, and I have to be careful of this for power gaming, is are you getting characters, you know, like you're saying, when you lord over and say, no, you should choose this to optimize your character for this. And you get two things. One is if you have a bunch of power gamers, if you don't optimize, they get angry because you're not making the party as effective as they are intended. If you get just a couple of power gamers and they so outdo everyone else, people are like, well, what am I doing here? I'm just twiddling my thumbs sometimes. And I think that's the balance of why I sometimes like I think that's part of it. The other part is, like you said, there's an arms race. And if I keep everyone kind of in the middle ground, people can still feel that sense of adventure without feeling like it's going over. Like you were talking Unearthed Arcana. Well, boy, once you get double weapon specialization plus an 18 plus 0 strength, and now I'm getting my +5 or +6 sword. Oh, well, okay, fine. You're fighting gods at that point, but is that really any more fun than you were fighting at 4th level and you met a troll and you actually had to think your way through that one?
And that's the thing that the power gamer always forgets, is that the game can always get more powerful and does. So
Yes.
he's really never powerful. He just thinks he is.
Yeah, he always assumes he's looking at this from the perspective of how powerful I was, like compared to what I was at 1st level versus 1st level style monsters. Like,
Yep.
Oh yeah, we'll see how well you stack up against the Tarask, buddy. I'd give you about 3 rounds if I were being generous.
Let me introduce you to Asmodeus.
Oh, Asmodeus, yeah.
And but once again, and did this about 5 minutes ago. You, as a group, you are doing a really good job of preempting the topics I've got on my sheet, because the next topic I'd got on my sheet was trust, and Omanel mentioned trust. Because I feel power gamers turn D&D into a very competitive style of play, I think there can be trust issues, and I don't like playing a game where there isn't that trust there, that the DM and the players are more together than against each other. Even when I'm running Call of Cthulhu, here we go, back to the topic again. Drink. I want the players to progress through the adventure. I want them to try. I want them to see progress. I want them to have success. But I want the game to do what it's intended to along the way, because that's part of the enjoyment. And I hope the players that I play with trust me to run that sort of game, and trust me to run the game in the manner in which it's intended.
I agree with you on that trust part. The other point is, you know, there used to be a time of like, oh, I beat this trap, so I beat the DM as a player. Or the other part I always hated was, and this always seemed to occur, you know, we get the one guy, he's like, I created the best character or whatever, and now I'm going to try killing the other party member to show you that I was superior. And then he found out that no, my character was better than his. And that was look, that's not what I wanted to do. That's not the intention of the power gaming aspect. But you know, sometimes you feel like not only do you have to trust the DM, and as I've gotten older, I'm like, look, even if you tell, I don't really care if the DM would go off the side and said, hey, is it okay if you fail the saving throw? Yeah, okay, that's fine. If it makes a better story, that's where I am now in my life. But at the beginning, it's like, no, you're no, my character wouldn't do that. And you're going, okay, well, a story together. I think that's the important part. And we're, you know, we all want, none of us want the game to end in like 15 or 30 minutes. Otherwise,
No,
like, why are you playing?
Exactly. I mean, even the most brutal of one shot scenarios, I want, even running Tomb of Horrors, I wanted my players to get somewhere in it and feel that they've achieved something before they died, because the group needs to have that satisfaction.
Yeah, that's why I kind of reel against the again, Call of Cthulhu, take a drink, but against the idea that Call of Cthulhu is all about killing the players or driving them mad.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. Sandy Peterson himself even says it's not. The game rules since the dawn of the game say it's not, because they have sanity recovery. They have, there are plenty of ways to avoid dying in that game. If your players are smart, they're not going to die. They may get mangled. They may have bouts of madness, but the game is not all about that. So...
I think it's all about dealing. It's all about dealing with that descent into madness as well. I think that's, and
it's also a self-limiting thing for power gaming, because as you learn more spells, you become more powerful, but your descent in madness is so much faster. So
if you try to take on the deep ones with any weapon, they're likely going to kill you in a couple of rounds. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there are ways of power gaming for that. Even for Call of Cthulhu, but it's like, okay, I learned all these spells. Yes, but you're now at the brink of madness, which means your character is going to leave or retire from the game faster than the others, and so there's that trade-off. And because there's that trade-off, do the players really want those additional spells or not?
Well, those spells usually are slow to cast, have a cost involved just to cast them. Like, do you really want to do what it takes to cast that spell?
Well, but it's just learning it. So not even casting a spell, just to learn the spell is okay. Well, how much sanity am I going to lose? Oh, I get to learn more about the deep ones, which means that we can better combat them. Yes, but you lose like 10 or 15 sanity. You're like, do I really want to do that? So it's a self-limiting thing, I think, as well. And the sanity is, I think, also to prevent those characters from being those super high, powerful levels as well.
Yeah. I've been accused of being a power gamer once or twice in my life, even though I'm not. I have just made good characters that also were played well. So.
I mean, when I was 13 or 14, I was a competitive little so-and-so, and I was probably quite a combative DM, because my players were the same sort in return, and then we sort of fostered that belief in each other that's how the game would be played. It wasn't until I grew up, which takes me on to with the topic of trust comes the aspect of experience. I have a feeling, and going back to my point of generalizations about Dutch people tending to be taller and and all that sort of thing, but I have a feeling the majority of power gamers tend to be younger and inexperienced gamers.
I think there's still scope for power gamers to be old, embittered fucking people who have pissed away their lives playing elf games. I was back to you, elf games and generic names.
No, there's an origin story to that name, but it's so. Yeah, I mean, I would say 10 to yes. My experience, I've had a very different experience. I played with some really shit-tastic power gamers when it comes to, and then they were all oldish, my age. But and that goes back through the decades. But so yeah, I mean, yes, younger kids are often, younger players are often looking for that power rush. Yes. But like Ginger's pointing out, there's a lot of people who've the gaming table is where they take out their frustrations and angers and have their power fantasies.
Well, I'm saying because I mean, in my experience, I grew out of it, and I think I'm getting the impression that Omanal did exactly the same. Even though he admits probably he's a recovering power gamer, but it feels like he's grown out of it or learned how to deal with it.
I have to. Well, one is I can start seeing where there's power gaming issues, and I'm like, stop it. So I mean, I'll stop it just for that reason. The other part of it is that I know that there's that deep lurking part of me that says, yes, you want to do this and do this, and like, and I have to beat it back. But sometimes I was looking at things like, okay, this doesn't make. I think part of it also, and I'll mention D&D in particular, especially 5e, gives you such cool powers at the high levels that you want to do it, but it doesn't necessarily make it a better game. It's like same reason I don't like superheroes. I don't feel the same threat or the same mentality, but I remember arguing about dragons and barbarians. I said, you can do this, and then you can do this, and then you can do that. And I said, yeah, but that doesn't make it a better game. That just sort of makes everything like the kung fu, the wuxia,
Wuxia.
Yeah, okay, fine. Where I'm flying across it's the 2 levels above where I'm using I'm gonna fly across and punch through the dragon on this side, then come back the other, and I go, no.
So you mentioned superheroes, so that's my cue.
Okay.
Because I'm still a huge fan of the old Marvel face rip system, the old Marvel superheroes game from the 80s. And that is where I've seen some of my worst power gamers, because there are random ways to build your characters in that game, and it sucks to do so. So most people I knew modeled their characters, which is like, and right from the beginning, it's open for abuse. Modeling your characters, literally having an idea and just assigning things to your character however you want that fit your concept. There's not even a buy in there. So we would play these games and we'd all agree on what kind of a team we're gonna play, and we'd have one player who constantly was playing some nigh cosmic level character when like half of us are Hawkeyes and Wolverines, and if we had power levels, they were like kind of that single power angle like Spider-Man or the X-Men, and he's out there as the mighty Thor.
Perfect Avengers team. There you go.
Well, that's true.
You remember the adventure that came with the original Marvel superhero set, Day of the Octopus?
Yes.
I would say now that the power gamer will be the person who plays Captain Marvel in that.
Oh yeah.
And the role player is the one who plays Captain America.
Yeah.
Because Captain America is the weakest by a mile.
In Marvel too, the power gamers almost always found their way to put, I got casual killer as one of my talents, so you don't take karma loss when you kill somebody.
Let's say, because DK, I heard you making a noise there. In that Marvel superheroes game, Captain America cannot deal very much damage. Really,
he's got remarkable strength, which means he can deal out at max 20 points,
unless he manages to charge through lots of squares and somehow pull off some crazy move along the way. He's got good fighting ability. But Captain Marvel, her powers are insane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Obviously, when compared to
they hadn't even got up to the higher levels of like they did in the advanced set, and she was already at like what, monstrous and unearthly in some of her powers.
Yeah.
If you compared Captain America to like say, I don't know, Black Widow or Hawkeye, like, because like Captain America is a super soldier. He's superhuman.
He's whereas not bulletproof except for the fact that he wears chainmail.
Well, I mean, he has a shield that like, and plus he can think 10 times faster than Black Widow can. He can literally think faster than she can pull a trigger, man. She's never gonna hit him.
Is that because of the super serum, or because he's a man and she's a woman?
Super serum.
If you're gonna get down to it, he doesn't think any faster. He's just got higher reflexes.
No, he can literally process information faster than humans can. He can literally think faster than human beings can.
Oh yeah, he's got. I mean, compare him to a normal human. He is a superhero. But I'm saying in that particular group, there were 4 characters predetermined for that adventure.
Oh, we've lost out now.
Oh, we just lost Owl. Oh,
He's back in again. There were 4 characters predetermined for that adventure, and of the 4, he is in terms of game mechanics by far the weakest.
Because doesn't that have Spider-Man, Miss Marvel, Captain America, and I can't remember the 4th.
It's the Thing, isn't it? The other one.
Oh, the Thing would be almost Carol Danvers' level, just in his level of invulnerability and and strength. But yeah, she's slinging cosmic energy bolts everywhere, and she's invulnerable, and she's strong. She's not as strong as the Thing. She's and
or Thor or Hulk, but yeah, she's fairly strong.
In that, yeah, I mean, Geek's got a point is solid there. The role player is going to either play Spider-Man because he wants to one-line the entire game, just do quippy remarks and be a doofus the entire game. And that's
the Thing's the same.
That's true. Every other character is a good one for a role player. Honestly, Captain America is the guy who wants to play an actual character because you have to play that
Boy Scout, honorable, hero.
Yeah. And Carol Danvers is kind of a no-nonsense character. She really is a power gaming character because she doesn't give a shit about much of anything. She's got all the power.
Yes, she has. She has.
So Dark Knight, just so you know, and I'm not sure if you really looked at it, you have to understand where their skills go up. Is like the average human was generally less than 20.
Typical.
6.
Yeah, I mean,
typically.
And then the superheroes, I think the middle level was what, about 30 to 50?
Yeah.
The bottom level for super heroic above human ability is remarkable, which is 30.
Yeah.
And then that goes all the way up to, well, in the advanced version, all the way up to infinite.
I mean, some of them went over, like I remember Thor had like 100.
It Unearthly.
Yeah, Unearthly. I'm just remembering what I saw. Now there were a couple of them that had like I think Captain America's shield was like 1,000 for the damage or something like that. Because
it's adamantium vibranium mix, and therefore it's.
But it didn't deal damage; it just absorbed it.
Yeah, it absorbed damage, and it still did remarkable damage. So it's usually going to one-shot a normal human.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up because you're looking at it, not being familiar with the Dark Knight. There's a huge power discrepancy as you go through, especially as you start doing those shifts. And it's. I think it went. Was it 4,000 or 5,000 was what the original did, something like that. But yeah, I mean,
the best way to look at it is that without really trying to cheese some. The mechanics and pulling off an incredible charge through multiple hexes, zones, and landing it. Captain America can't even damage Spider-Man because his basic damage output is not enough to get through Spider-Man's body armor
and his reflexes, his danger sense.
And Spider-Man can regenerate damage, which I don't think Cap could do. No,
Spider-Man can't regenerate.
Spider-Man can't, no. But Spider-Man...
in the game he can't?
Spider-Man,
he can't.
Spider-Man equally can't hurt the Thing. And none of them can compare with the fact that Captain Marvel can basically move the speed of light.
Yeah, the Thing's got like a invulnerability or body armor, whatever he had, of something like...
Amazing or monstrous.
Amazing, which is like 75 or something like that. No, amazing. Yeah, 75. And then Spider-Man's only got an incredible strength. He can lift 8 tons. So,
which is 40 in the game.
I'll throw in some shade. Tell me when someone makes a good superhero RPG.
Well,
Marvel Superheroes was done back in 1984.
It was good fun. Okay, it was a bit wonky, but it was good fun, and it was ever so quick and easy to use.
It was also probably the best system to simulate a superhero game
or
a superhero comic that I've ever run into.
I will say, technically, If you want to get technical with it, because they were the heroes of their time, Lords of Olympus, because you get to play Greek heroes. So technically,
no, stop. Stop.
No, we're
Stop.
talking about the superhero genre.
because there's no superheroics to Hercules.
We're not talking about Greek myth. We're talking about comic book
Yeah.
superheroes.
Anyhow,
And
Well,
there is a
well,
Hercules
he
who
has-
Hercules, and he's got an unearthly strength.
Unearthly! Hercules could bend the Hulk into a pretzel. Do you have any idea how strong he is?
Not in the phase rip system. No, shut up.
And not in
Shut
the
up,
Marvel
DK.
Oh God! I'm not even gonna get into this with you because I will fly to the States and slap you both in the face with a fish.
He's pulling out the D&D version.
I'm pulling out the D&D version of Hercules. D&D version of Hercules.
That doesn't count because Hercules in the myth does a lot more than the D&D version.
Well, no, he's got 25 strength, which is the maximum in D&D.
Yeah, but
There
that's
you go.
nowhere near strong enough. He's nowhere near strong enough. He would need to have a strength effectively of like 500 because he can literally hold up as a human, when he was a demigod, he could hold up the heavens.
Nobody wants to talk about myths and legends.
No.
Fuck you!
We're talking about a logic system that says that a dude can come down in a shower of gold and seduce a woman.
Wait.
Yeah, so you can pump a bunch of magical bullshit, and a scrawny little shit like Steve Rogers can become a super soldier. Yeah, because that's not retarded.
Wait. Hey, Dark
Please
Knight.
bring up Mage's Musings. As a kid, I loved Heroes Unlimited. I was trying to remember what the name of the Palladium
one,
Superheroes game was. I loved making characters in Heroes Unlimited, but when it came time to play it, it all seemed to fall apart.
Marvel was
we
so
were
good
only
because you
like
could do that
12
while
or
you're in
so.
class. Literally, it was that easy to make characters.
I thought I never played it. I just looked at it, and I'd look at I thought the Marvel went fairly well. I was not a big fan of superheroes, but Dark Knight, you have to admit, I'm sure that Yale Geek can pull out Atlas, and Atlas will have a 25 strength too, and Hercules is the same strength as Atlas, approximately.
Yes. The strongest, naturally the strongest character in that book is Thor's son.
Magni.
Because he's the only one who can lift Mjolnir without using the belt.
Jesus, that's actually kind of impressive.
Even Thorn needs the belt to do it.
Wait, how is Magni stronger than Thor?
Are you pulling
genes.
the face rip out? Are we pulling out Marvel?
My phase rip stuff is all in the.
No, in D&D, Thor in D&D with the belt and the fucking.
Here we go. Right, Thor. Thor naturally has 25 strength, but he's got a little special bracket afterwards. His normal strength is 25, but his girdle and glove allow him to exceed that and thus carry Mjolnir. Whereas Magni has 25 special without the girdle and glove, and thus he can lift Mjolnir.
That's
It says here he can bend. He can bend anything he can grip, put his fist through anything, lift nearly anything. Judge's option, even things that are supposed to be unliftable, like his father's hammer. There we go. I'm just going to mute myself a moment.
Yeah, building characters. I think one of the most fun I had building superhero characters was it had to be with champions, though.
I also
the mapping the characters.
Yeah.
Although if the DM or GM or whatever you want to call it for that game did not ride roughshod over your players, in 2 or 3 sessions, I ended up with one of my players getting his character's strength up through a combination of density increase, growth, and just a high starting strength to where he could juggle aircraft carriers if physics would allow. It was like one-shotting villains. And I'm like, all right, clearly yeah.
I did. Oh, I did run some champion sessions, but it was with like pre-gens for my local comic store at the time, just because it was like, well, everyone blatantly just wants to play Marvel characters, but Phase Rip had gone out of print by that point. Yeah, had fun.
Anyway, we're 2 hours into the stream, and we almost stayed on topic for those 2 hours, but we have got through all of my notes, so it's a case
the
of
entire
now,
genre of superheroes is all power gaming, so
It
we're
is,
still
yes,
on topic.
yes. Yeah.
But no,
Well, the other problem you have as a DM is not only just challenging, but then encouraging players to go forward, because like, well, what's the incentive? Now I know that, to be fair, I know Shadow and Son, he has played really, really high level campaigns over 20 years, where they're almost, not only are they gods, but they're controlling galactic empires by the sounds of it. And he doesn't seem to mind as much, but I, as a DM, do not enjoy it. It's like, okay, you've hit a certain level, I'm bored. You got, what do you want to do now? And even if the players want to keep playing, no, it's not fun for me anymore. And I think that's the other part that the people forget for power gaming is you still have to make it enjoyable for your dungeon master. Otherwise, you just be like, I'm bored. I'd rather do something else.
DM is a player.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the enjoyable thing, because I've been like thinking about, should I bring this up? Like, so it's not the min-max inside of power gaming, but it's like the groups and the players who find one strategy that works well, and we're all raised on these tales of like, yeah, fucking 10-foot proles prodding the floors, that was how you find the traps. And it's just the ones that keep doing the same strategy over and over and over. And whether I'm a DM or a player, I just feel like, oh god, DM must be so bored.
I think I made that point early on, though, that power gamers do tend to deal more with their character sheet and less with the game environment. They look more to what they've got, what skills they've got, what items they've got, rather than interacting with the environment in the way that the DM presents it.
They tend to play to rote pretty often. And I think that's where Ginger's coming from. It's like every situation is handled exactly the same, and that goes back to that optimal, versus suboptimal discussion too. It's like
it's less imaginative play because they've done the mental work beforehand,
and then they're going to get snarky with the rest of the players because they don't want to do the 10-foot pole down every freaking hallway. And, for once they do want to listen at the door, or maybe they don't want to listen at the door because the power gamer's a thief.
Yeah.
Power gamer wizards are weird.
Well, and I think
they got to live long enough to get powerful.
Well, and I was mentioning this before. Whenever we looked at it, is I think the old D&D was, supposed to be generally 8 players, and the idea was that one person does combat and the other person does this. And I said, oh, okay. And I remember I never made it to the game because the dungeon master didn't like the fact that his dungeon master character, which I was going to play, I said, well, I just want to switch up different spells. I don't want to have all the combat spells. And that so freaked him out that I never talked to him again. Because I said, I want to do all the utility spells. Why in the world is do stuff that's different? Because I want to think outside the box. And I'm not against stuff, but when you do with power, and I know we're all talking about power gaming is linear, but boy, when you get a power game that's non-linear, then you're just like, oh crap. And sometimes you have to come here off the side. Could you not do that because it'll ruin everything? Oh, okay. That's sometimes where you have a big problem is because I like non-linearity, but I don't like it when they're like, oh, look, I found the weakness here and I'm going to exploit it. And you're just like, okay, come here. We need to talk, please don't do this.
Yeah. And I made the point early on that one difference between a power gamer and a role player is that the role player will intentionally make decisions that aren't always perfect.
My most shining moment of doing that as a player was self-destructing my assassin droid in a Star Wars game to save the rest of the team. Like, they're trying to get to the ship. I'm going to hold off the stormtroopers. And then, of course, when I watched The Mandalorian later on, I'm like, hey, they stole my scene.
One of my favorite bits of role playing from one of my groups, and I'm sure I've mentioned it on the stream at one point. Are you all familiar with the module N1 against the Cult of the Reptile God?
Yes.
Yes, I haven't read it yet.
By reputation, never played it.
There's a temple in there, and there's a load of golden idols. And the clue to the nature of those idols is the fact that the evil cultists that are inhabiting the temple haven't desecrated them, haven't touched them. They've left them in place. And one of my players was playing. He chose to play a stereotypical dwarf because, as he said at the time, so few people play the stereotype dwarf now. The hard drinking, gruff, smelly, grumpy, gold loving dwarf. And he was playing. He was a breath of fresh air because people play against type so much, and he was playing really, really well. And he saw this corridor with all these golden artifacts in there, and he's like, "Do they look valuable?" And I was like, "Oh yes." Then I grab one. Okay. Can you make a saving throw versus spells, please? Failed. Well, and the curse on them is that if they fail a saving throw versus spells, a random stat drops to 3.
Oh,
wow.
And we rolled a d6 for which stat, and it was intelligence. So I described him as looking stunned, looking confused, and then sort of coming to his senses. And then I said, okay, so what do you do?
I grab another one.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. He said to me, okay, where am I? Can you describe? I blink. I look. Where am I? I'm in. I said, you're in a corridor with a big line of statues. They're all shining and golden. And yeah, exactly. He grabbed another one.
Ooh, the shiny.
And that's an example of, for me, a role player.
Yeah.
Didn't they do something with Nerdarchy where he was doing a punching half ogre and he decided to find a gelatinous cube and decided to start punching it as well, even though everyone knew what was going to happen?
That surprises me with Nerdarchy because they strike me as a pair of power gamers.
Oh, far
Yeah, well, they
from.
do. They they do a lot of, like, if you look at them from at a glance, you'd say, oh, they do a lot of builds. You could kind of get that impression, but I've seen enough of their builds. Yeah, that's it. They're theme builders, not like power gamers.
Okay.
I've seen enough of their stuffs where it's like, yeah, no, these guys are doing it for like role playing purposes.
One of their most famous campaigns is running an entire all goblin party of juggalos.
I lost interest in their channel when they started talking about character builds all the time, and I hate that style of thought in terms of characters. So I just sort of switched off and never went back to it.
I don't know if they still do that stuff anymore. I don't think so.
They do.
That's the challenge. The challenge, Geek, your next Call of Cthulhu adventure run through. All the player characters have to be juggalos.
The problem that I have with all of this, not knocking it at all, is trying to figure out, and this is the problem of whenever you start monetizing on YouTube, and then it becomes profitable enough where you start chasing views.
Yeah,
talk to the miniatures gamers, gaming YouTubes. They've found very creative ways to work the term Warhammer into their titles, because nothing without a Warhammer in it gets pushed by the algorithm for miniatures.
And when I look at stuff like that, I really do feel that it encourages some of this bad behavior because all the power gamers like, oh, how can I power game this one, or what can I do for there? And you go, oh, okay, does it actually make the game more fun? And I think that's some of the bad aspects of the YouTube algorithm. Instead of saying how to make a more interesting character, it's how can I make a more powerful character? But I heard the same thing with I don't remember his name, where they were talking about they were going to leave Pathfinder because there were too many optimal paths or selections to have instead of making it a more interesting game. And I will say this:
that was taking 20. I think he was talking about how there were so many options, but there really weren't. There was all these options, but only like 3 of them were good and worth taking. So,
I mean, if anyone's looked at Forbidden Lands and you start looking at some of the skills, you do get these, and it does encourage. But what's interesting about it was that it's one of the few things where cooking actually makes a huge difference. Fishing, you're like, well, do I want to be a better fighter, or do I actually want to survive to get to the combat? And I like the fact that they made all the skills. When I say skills, it's not the skills themselves; it's the special abilities for those skills matter so much more. And so, yes, you can say, well, I can fight better than anyone else. Well, that's great. But guess what? I can fish and I can cook and I can scavenge vegetables. Guess who's going to live longer?
Yeah.
If
your group is going to play with the survival aspects, yeah.
Well, that's the one reason that 5e has bugged me for so much, is that they have removed a lot of that survival aspect, which is one of the things I like to force players to do, because it forces them to think in that non-combat term or mindset. But speaking of which I think is the other part when you're talking about your Android, if you look at Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, the 4th edition starts putting it down that your character can get half the experience if they die, depending on what skills you have, and humans get that pretty much automatically. It's an interesting aspect where you're not getting a major punishment if your character dies, unlike others were like, okay, you all start back at first level, good luck. So there's that part.
I will admit to, with my last few video titles on YouTube, to attempting to game the algorithm a little by making them potentially, I don't know, clickbaity.
You have to.
But
you got to go further. That's where you fucked up with your MERP videos. You should have been like Amazon's Lord of the Rings in book form or something.
Oh God!
I will say now that this week I am currently on -2 subscribers for the week, so it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. So,
they're all bots. That's what you say. They're all bots.
Very possibly. It happens. It hasn't been a productive week.
Yeah, the algorithm's got so bad that I've seen guys like just to do a product review. They're like, "Are these miniatures better than Warhammer? Is this the game that will kill Games Workshop?" And then you like get in there and they're like, "Nothing. They're not dissing Games Workshop at all. It's just they had to put it in the title to get the algorithm to pick it up."
I wonder if I should put Wizards of the Coast and 5e in every single video title I do, whether or not it's about
or like that whole Amazon thing is like, is my campaign better than Amazon Prime's Rings of Power?
I don't know. I haven't watched Rings of Power, but that could be either a really low bar or a really high bar.
I'm enjoying it.
I
feel like I'm just watching somebody's...
I had to, Elf. I had to.
But talking about Geek's love of the 1800s, I think he might like Carnival or what is that?
Carnival.
I mean,
good shout.
Whatever that's called. No, Carnival Row. That's it on Amazon. That might be the thing that he likes because that has that 1800s feel with magic and everything else in it. I don't know if you've watched that one, John.
Elf, I can't account for your shit taste, man. So whatever.
I barely watch anything on television. I have to say, I spend far too long on gaming stuff on the internet. I'm afraid. Yes, everyone should sub to Major's Musings, and everyone should sub to Roleplay the Right Way. And anyone else? That is DM James. Anyone
Yeah.
else? Anyone else want a quick shill? No,
So
nobody else.
what happens if you die at first level?
Start at 0.
Oh, there is the option of starting at 0, but no, I am the sort of DM who will make new characters start at first level. As far as I'm concerned, if you haven't managed yourself a little folder of characters, then it's your own fault.
I heard the Alexandrian say that what they, and I don't know if this is true, in the old white box, they used to have high level characters farm low level characters because they couldn't get a lot of experience. So they'd send like a 5th level or 7th level wizard with a group of 1st level characters, and that's how they would build up those characters very quickly to get up to the point where now they can protect the mage, and that makes sense when you look at some of the old charts for the magic user. It's like, yes, if you're 7th level magic user, you're right up there with like a 3rd or 4th level fighter in the combat. So yep, it works.
It does work, yeah.
I've even heard of people running their characters through solo adventures to level them up, like just going through the DMG with the random dungeon dungeon builder and encounter builds and stuff.
That's what I would have done in my teens if I'd have been a player.
Well, and I suppose it's a semi-fair way. I mean, as long as you're being legit, and if your character dies, you die.
Now, well, to be fair, and we've got to mention this, is when John there was flipping through his choose your books, and I said, well, just hold your finger back just in case you can go back and mess up.
I was rereading some Knights of the Dinner Table recently, the role-playing comic. I know Squirrel's going to be all over this because he is a Hackmaster fan. And one of the fun things in the comic is that in this Knights of the Dinner Table world, which is like hyper D&D for anyone who needs any context, like everyone in the community plays D&D and stuff like that. One of the things they mention is that they fully expect the players to roll up loads and loads of new characters until they get like ones with optimal stats, but they still have to like chart out, like make the character sheets for every one they roll up, with the idea being that the ones that they don't use, they have to give to the DM, who can then use them as NPCs. And I thought that was a really charming idea.
That's not a bad idea at all.
There'd be hundreds until I get my, all 15s down the board. It's like, I used to do a lot of characters. Well, the big thing is equipment. After a while, it's like fighter gets this equipment, cleric gets this equipment. They all have the same equipment over and over.
I will say now, either tomorrow night or Friday night, we will be having our second attempt at the House of Hell.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping that you all get a bit further than you did last time, because it was all over within an hour. It might be tomorrow, it might be Friday, depends. We'll have to see. So, well, it'll be another thing to look forward to.
You gotta humor me, John, and go for the Lone Wolf stuff. I mean, I've given you the link for the Project Aeon, so you can literally go through those.
I've had a look at that, and it's of interest to me. My only issue with that website is that, as I mentioned, the fact that I would have to Alt Tab quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
Because I've only got one monitor.
I did. When we were talking about this and the Fighting Fantasy, I was like, I was thinking, like, legally, there's no way to obtain Fighting Fantasy PDFs.
No.
But on Steam, you can get some versions of the game books that they've just, like, gamified. So you just have to share the one screen with that. But then, any of us can share a screen. So if one of us is on with you, the
So-
other person can be sharing their screen with the text of the Fighting Fantasy game book.
So, John, I don't know if you have Windows 10 or whichever version, but if you
I do, yes.
But if you push off everything off to one side, it will split the screen in half, and then you can put the opposite on the other. That, or you could do what I did while I was going through it online, trying to memorize, my youth. Is I decided to actually do a physical copy by hand and put it down as I was going through the online reading.
Right.
So.
Thank you, Squirrel. Enjoy your dinner. I mean, I will have to play with different ways. My old smoke blowing machine here that struggles and chunters. I'd have to admit my eyes as well might not cope with how small I'd have to have it all for it all to fit on my screen properly and actually be able to read what's going on and read chat.
Oh yeah.
But anyhow, it worked okay the other day. It did work okay.
Yeah.
So, well, as Els brought up the knockers, that extended knockers sequence was good. I enjoyed that.
It wasn't planned either. I mean, I hadn't pre-read any of it, so I just sort of thought, I'll make a thing of that.
Yeah, Night Squirrel, and actually, I should probably sign off too, as my wife wants to go to bed. So.
All right.
I think mine has finally gone to sleep.
Oh, well. Hopefully she's getting better. I mean, we're hearing those coughing. And,
Yeah, she's out for a couple of days now. Yeah, she's peaceful now.
Give it 5 minutes, she'll start coughing again despite you.
Very Cthulhu DM of you. She's
I was thinking Castle Amber there.
Yeah, Castle Amber.
Yes.
All right. I am going to bid you all adieu. And yeah.
Thank you for joining in, Ginger.
Good night.
Well, thank you.
Good
It's
night,
been a
Ginger.
pleasure as always. Always good to see you all.
Later on.
So we've got about half hour left to. Oh no, she's off again. Anything that chat wants us to talk about? Just ping us something, and we'll try and talk about it.
What?
So
Okay, I'm going to bring up a quick question. What is the worst system that encourages power gaming?
Pathfinder. Is that the right answer?
I don't know. I'm just asking what everyone's opinion is, and I can see Elfbait going through like, well, let me go through my Rolodex.
Well, Halakar still wants to know what a what a juggalo is. Is it
Yeah.
A male
Is it
prostitute, basically.
is it just a different way
No,
of
that's a
spelling?
gigolo.
Yeah,
A juggalo is
Oh,
a fan of the
oh.
Insane Clown Posse.
From Posse,
A super
right.
fan of the Insane Clown Posse.
Magnets, how do they work?
But
Cheers, Slant.
in answer to your question, Omen, I've got to say one of the worst has got to be the hero system. Champions and et al. It's just it's all about mathing your character.
Well, so is third edition or Pathfinder, though, isn't it? And
No, because hero system is literally buying individual D6 of effect and then trying to apply limitations and advantages to them to get the optimal bang for buck. So, for example, I might want to make a energy blast, which is a type of power. And the cool thing is that in hero system, energy blast is just a type of power, and the special effect you apply to it determines what kind of energy it is. That can be anything from sonic to. So let's say I buy 2d6. Well, each d6 costs X amount of points. Well, then I can go ahead and say, okay, well, it needs an obvious, accessible focus. So now I've got an energy gun, and that now cuts my point. That now cuts the point cost by like 1/4 of its original points. But then I'm also going to go ahead and say that it has a limited number of charges because it takes ammo, and then you just kind of you pile on all this. So not only is it power gaming, but it's also intrinsically and absolutely min maxy. So
fair enough. Does anyone have an answer for this one? I mean, I've linked a few videos to Facebook pages, but I don't know if I can link my channel or not to Facebook. I don't know.
I've never found a way other than actually just posting the link. There may be programs out there that do that, some sort of aggregator, but
I don't use Facebook, so I mean, I don't know any gaming groups on there. So
I don't use it. I in the very early days of my channel, I did push it a little bit through a few Facebook groups, but I haven't done recently. Maybe I should, but I got a bit conscious of spamming, so I didn't want to just pound it out there all the time.
yeah, the Facebook group for my old channel is still alive. I still occasionally post there, but what I would do is post it there and then post it to my profile. I didn't actually have a huge Facebook presence for it.
No. I mean, maybe I should do a bit more sort of on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah.
I think you're better off putting your Discord through there, honestly. And
Discord seems to have a lot more little add-ons and weird little tweaks that you can do with it to have it pull from things. So I bet you there's a way to get your YouTube stuff to auto-populate to your Discord.
I know. There are ways of doing that. I know Max from Legion of Myth has got that down to a T. Maybe I should have a chat with him about it sometime. But my things do appear to have stagnated. But while we've been on I've gone up by 1 subscriber in the last 2 hours. So we've reversed the decline in the last 2.5 hours.
Well, chat needs to start chucking some questions at us.
Yes. Every single live stream I've done recently, I've had the first person to like or dislike has been a dislike. I seem to have a terminal disliker.
Well, small-brained individuals. You live rent-free inside these permanent haters' heads. So I
doesn't
wouldn't
matter anyways.
bother.
The dislike is still considered positive interaction as far as YouTube is concerned.
Yeah, if you comment or upvote or downvote, it's literally just cosmetic. If you really don't want them to succeed, don't bother interacting. That's the best thing you could do.
There is no such thing as bad publicity in certain cases.
So L has a question.
Uh-oh.
It says, should players just blipped. Should players power game social encounters?
No, because that's kind of funny. That's funny to me because I don't think social encounters should have any mechanics other than reaction rolls. And that's it.
I don't like. Best way to describe this. I prefer, as a DM, to have my players role play out the social encounter, and if a role is involved, I will add modifiers or subtract penalties based on how well they've done. So, no, not really. Not in my games.
I think there's a positive and negative, and having the higher charisma allows you to get away with some bad things that are said. It's like in your life, it's like, how did that person say it? And I said the exact same thing, and I got killed. Whereas this person, and people are like, oh, that's okay. Well, that's where charisma comes in. But I think that the problem that I have with it is unlike combat, which has multiple rounds of this. Most social encounters, people do one reaction, that's it. And so it's either a pass or a fail.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issues that come into it. Though, it's weird that they have all these rules for role playing, and I'm not saying that doesn't apply to like some of the White Wolf games, which went more social, but a lot of them don't seem to have a good, robust system for social interactions.
I think a good way to do that would be to borrow the same mechanic that a lot of systems use for chase mechanics. Call of Cthulhu's chase mechanics, for example, which are good and really, really fun ways to kind of, I guess, abstract a chase without necessarily having to role play every last turn. Because ultimately, a social interaction is kind of like a chase. You've got a start point, you've got an end goal, and then there are obstacles along the way that you have to overcome that can turn the chase to for the better or the worse. And can you get to the end point before the end point gets too many steps out of reach for you to be able to actually accomplish your goal?
And if you've watched Mage's Musings videos on another Shield for his channel, he uses reaction rolls a lot, and I think he does them in the right way. And he describes in his videos how he applies the modifiers based on how the characters are reacting to the individuals in the game, which is the right way of doing it.
I that's one thing when people talk about first edition, and everyone talks about building up their characters, but they all seem to ignore just how powerful charisma is.
Yeah.
In 1E, if you actually use everything, because all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can bring in 10 retainers versus your 2, which you don't like because you aren't power gaming like I am. And I mean, there's some other aspects there, but I also think that I know that Exalted has something we have to go towards encouraging people. I also like the Blades in the Dark system, which the Forge in the Dark, where they use little pie charts, and the way that they break it apart, it can move forward or backwards over time, or you could have multiple of them, and it gives an idea of nothing is instantaneous, and it might take months to convince the king to go to war, or it might be as long as you're successful at it, and it slowly takes time to work its way through, and some things will be more successful than others. I think there are ways of handling it. I just have not liked, in particular, how D&D has just kind of just used one wall or something like that.
That's incorrect in 5e.
Oh, okay.
If you look in if you look for the rules for social encounters in DMG,
Mm-hmm.
your DM's supposed to establish a starting point, and then social skill rolls are supposed to move the needle of the opposition, but it's not intended to be a yes no.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, and the idea also allows, if played rules as written, it's actually allows the DM to set impossible goals too. Like, no, there's no way the king is just going to turn over the kingdom to you because you rolled really well. So yeah, I mean, 5th edition gets a lot of flack, but and like most RPGs, I think a lot of the negative press they get is from people either not understanding what's actually there, or a lot of just folklore.
Well, I'm saying a lot of times, like you said, rules is written. That's to me the way it should be, and I think a lot of the flack that 5e gets is really from the player's handbook. It's not from the Dungeon Master's Guide. So I think the Dungeon Master's Guide is one of the better books out there. Period.
The 5e DMG is probably one of the best DMGs to come out because I mean,
in my opinion, it's the second best of the DMGs I've encountered. Actually, no. In terms of D&D type games, the third best. First edition DMG has never been beaten, and I think the Lore Master's Guide for Adventures in Middle-earth is a superb book.
Yeah, the only thing that any of them are really missing is like a section telling you, like, actually how to DM.
Yes,
and I guess they're love it or hate it or whatever, the new version of the DMG that they're working on for D&D 1, specifically, Chris Perkins, who's writing it, has said he's going to actually include a lot more information on how to run the game, like how to do the job of a DM. Not here's a bunch of tools. He's actually going to give you instruction on how to use those tools. So
I mean, I've I think Monty Cook and Kobold Press have done excellent for rounding those out for publishers. It's just unfortunate, like you said, is a lot of times they say, well, here are all the tools to do stuff. But as far as the editions, is the 5e book, I think is really good for the Dungeon Master's Guide. And I jokingly call it the best book that no one ever reads.
Oh yeah.
You know,
and it doesn't help that 5e has got all these great mechanics that it never uses. Like exhaustion is a great mechanic for that game, and it almost never appears in the game. Like there's very few monsters that use it as an effect. You know, there are very few environmental effects that use it, and of course, then people would have to want to play with environmental effects. So
there's a simple fix to that. Every time a character drops to 0 hit points, give them a level of exhaustion. There you go.
And I like that aspect in that because all of a sudden it forces them and you know they keep being knocked down. I think there's a lot in there when you actually look at the the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide is excellent. I like some of the alternate.
It's got sanity rules. It's got fear rules. It's got like difficult healing rules. You know?
Yeah.
The problem is getting anybody to want to play with those because they're all optional.
Yeah. Oh, they're happy to take all the optional rules regarding feats, the player-facing ones regarding feats and multiclassing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said a few times 5e where the optional rules become mandatory and the mandatory rules become optional.
That's not the case, though.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean when I say mandatory, I mean the sense of the rules you should be using become optional, and the rules you shouldn't be using become mandatory.
Well, I mean, there's whole sections in there that people have never read, and in the Dungeon Master Guide, which I'm like, okay, in the 1e it was kind of a la carte, but in this one, there are really good rules if you read into them. It's like, oh, okay, this will speed the game up, this will make it a little bit tougher, and my friend wants to play with some of those. And the first thing they do is there's an uproar from all of his current players. We don't want to do that, and it's like, because it. The sad fact of it is not that they're optimized power gamers, but they are kind of power gamers.
Yeah, they don't want the one thing that I found. So my second ever 5e campaign I ran after running my first experimental one and having kind of learned how it played versus older versions and having had a chance to digest some of the stuff in the DMG, I made a big checkbox, a big checklist, kind of a poll, and handed it to all my players with all the optional rules that I wanted to run. And out of the 10, 1 made it past muster. It's like I wanted to do, healing kit, the healing kit requirement for being able to do healing. Like you have to have a healing kit to do healing, and they didn't want to do that. So even like minor stuff was like, fine, if you don't want to do the slow healing rules, but then again, the slow healing rules, I mean, you could almost do a freaking video on that. So everybody assumes that if you're going to take extra time to heal, that suddenly the game shuts down. That's the biggest complaint I always hear. I don't want to sit around and do nothing for like weeks of game time, while my character heals up. I'm like, it's not like it stops. You're not necessarily in bed. And the big one thing I always want to pull out is, if you look at Lord of the Rings, for example, which always has a lot of good case scenarios for games. Rivendell is a healing scene.
Yeah.
Frodo is convalescing, but everybody else is walking around doing their own thing. In Rivendell. This is the bad parts of games, the what a lot of people read as negatives, are opportunities for role play. Your character gets injured, you have to seek help. A party member dying is an invitation to a whole new quest to find some way to bring him back. Yeah,
that thing about healing and seeking help is something that, again, Adventures in Middle Earth did really well, because you have to establish places of safety, sanctuaries, in order to be able to long rest in them. I think Malachi makes a good point here, that the rules hey, things are scattered between the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think there's too much in the player's handbook.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me looks at it as these are people who just want to walk through without having to do the tactical aspect. Because if you know it's slow healing, maybe I'm going to avoid some combats. Maybe I'm going to maybe I'm going to do more surprise attacks.
And that harkens back to that big misconception / bit of folklore that all old school was nothing but hack and slash and combat, and there was never any role playing. Yeah, there's plenty of role playing, and there's plenty of thinking, and plenty of avoiding fights because they were dangerous.
Yes.
And slow healing. That's what I was trying to get across to my players. It's not like I gave them a big list of stuff that had like no qualifier. I gave them a list and explained my rationale, like what this will do for the game. And still, I got 1 out of 10 options selected by the players to go for it. It was kind of disheartening. I haven't even tried anymore. I'm just like,
but that was what my friend did. Is I just thought about. But I'm looking at Malachi. I mean, that was somewhat true of 1E as well. I mean,
yeah, of course.
And I don't know how to feel about it because you either.
But that was 45 years ago. We've had 45 years of
hindsight.
Computerization.
I think Matt Colville put it well. I actually just caught a video of his today, and he's talking about, it's like back in the day, nobody learned how to play D&D just by picking up the rules and reading them.
No.
There was a culture and a tradition of D&D that established these expectations, and that kind of goes back to my point I make a lot now, which is the modern casual, more casual gamer. I mean, we still have hardcore gamers who want to play seriously and stuff nowadays. A lot of them aren't playing 5th edition, or they're playing hardcore editions of 5th edition, and some people are just playing straight 5th edition. But with that casual play mentality, that and the rules being clearer and easier to learn, I think you have cut out that sort of multi-generational gamer aspect where the old guys taught the young guys who taught the next group of young guys. And I'm not even talking about actual generations of people, just, that trickle
The
down.
newcomers.
Yeah.
Well, of course, a lot of us were playing, just like we had that one time, all the games that we played wrong. And, that was looking back at it like, I missed this rule or I ignored it. I will say this much is, you get a game like Pathfinder where the core book is 600 pages, which to me is just excessive.
But that's because they have player and DMG all in one book.
I agree, but I'm going to look at Conan, which is still a hefty book, which is 320 something pages. And what they do is they have a player's handbook separated that's just for the players that has all their stuff. So you can either buy, if you just going to buy one copy, you buy the big, thick, heavy version for the Dungeon Master, and then you buy a smaller, thinner version for the players if they want to do that, which has all the basic rules, but doesn't include monsters and DM advice and
Call
things
of Cthulhu
like that.
Does that too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Take a drink. But,
I've put L's comment on screen here because
it's a great point.
On the in the MERP game we played on Monday, one of the characters decided to go to Madame Augier's whorehouse in Metreth, and he learned quite a lot about what was going on in town while he was busy there. It turned out to be quite productive, and he went back there again later on.
I will say one thing, and to be fair, I did back the Kickstarter. When you look at basic and how easy that was for the players and dungeon masters to read and go through, that really helped solidify it. And I backed the OSC stuff for the basic. It has the individual books. The nice little part of it is I can split up those 5 books and say, okay, players, you get this and this one, and I keep the others. And I think that helps as well. So players are not, and that's really for the assumption that my players aren't going to buy the whatever book it is. But I think that's it, and I'm not blaming, because it is business. 5e assumes that basically every player will probably have their own player's handbook, and they only sell one Dungeon Master's Guide, and that's worked out well for them. And same thing with the Monster Manual. So
going back to L's comment real quick on that one. The whole flirting with nurses and your story about the House of Ill Repute. I think a lot of players forget that the same stuff that can happen in the movie scenes that they see can happen at the table. How often do you watch a movie where seemingly like pointless, meaningless downtime is used to further the plot?
Yeah.
You know, the two main characters go to a bar just to have a drink to wind down, and then the heavy, you have to provide these opportunities for the story to evolve, and it's in those downtime moments that can be facilitated by getting damaged or killed or resource depletion. Like when you're hungry and in the wilderness, that's going to develop the natural story that comes out of role playing.
Yeah,
Now,
and in this case, I mean, there's the information gathering, but there's also its potential allies. It's learning things about the characters. It's an opportunity for the players to put a bit of personality into the characters as well for the long term.
It also has them to get rumors from what's going on in the rest of the world. So you as a dungeon master can start building stuff up that may impact them 10 or 20 sessions down the line, but they don't feel like it just came out of left field. Oh, I'm hearing some grumbling. Someone says, yeah, it looks like the orcs are getting a little bit more aggressive. You're like, oh, okay, not a huge deal. And over time that builds up into the point of like, well, we just heard that, the keep on the borderland got crushed. And you're like, all right, that sounds like something's going on. And then later on, all of a sudden, when the orc horde is traipsing down, they're like, well, maybe we should have, dealt with that, several sessions before. But I do like the fact that 5e does have that downtime mechanic in there as well, where it has like what happened between the players.
Yeah, it's a good way to encourage players to accept downtime, which is another reason why I wish I could sell taking time to heal as a worthwhile downtime activity. Because every other downtime activity they've built from the Xanathar's section going forward is built as sort of a mini game. And for better or for worse, it encourages people to do downtime. And that allows the DM the opportunity to insert things, and even the downtime activities have that mechanic where there are I can't remember the term they call it, but there are the things that can happen because you're trying to pursue that
carousing.
Carousing, or even like making a magic item or trying to buy a magic item. There is like a whole mechanic now for trying to, of course, in the Forgotten Realms where magic's everywhere, finding an auction house to sell it. And then you might actually end up getting a rival or somebody who hates you because you outbid them for, trying to get that magic item. So, my current players are always wanting to do shopping off camera. And I know there's a lot of people who roll their eyes about the shopping session, but the shopping session is a chance to interact with NPCs. And and I can work information in through the shopkeepers or the innkeeper or whatever, But
I mean, I have to laugh because you're talking about that, but I mean, I go to a butcher about once every 2 weeks, and I get to find out what's going on from, the price of meat to what else is going on. It's interesting on how you interact, and it seems so simple, but you don't get that when you get that normally from a grocery store of those kinds of things. And, back then it's like, oh, this is the blacksmith. And so when you start going, oh, you know what, my horse threw a shoe. You're like, oh, okay, you know what, I can get that worked up for you. The other thing I think that 1E allowed was because you had to look for someone to train you and you were forced to those weeks of downtime, it forced a slower pace in certain ways. I mean, you could speed up the game, through months, but it seems like a lot of sessions are just, when you end the session this week, guess what? When you go back, it's 1 day has passed and you're going through it that way. And it really speeds up what's going through instead of really developing the world and the characters and the area around.
I think that's a result of the fact that game sessions tend to be so much shorter nowadays. And that is a product of a lot of people playing online as well as having busy lives. The longest online session I've ever had is probably 5 hours ish, but it's hard work keeping an online game going for that sort of amount of time, even with little breaks. I don't have the same difficulty in running a face-to-face game for a lot longer, because it feels more casual. And in a face-to-face game, I'd certainly I like to run a very sandboxy D&D game where possible and offer those sort of options. But online, it is more difficult.
Yeah.
And it's largely down to time constraints.
Yeah, I have a hell of a time getting people to actually bite at sandboxy stuff. Like, do something. I feel like that meme with the guy poking the thing, the dead guy with the stick. Do something. Yeah, it's like get out into the world and adventure. Especially considering all my players know that I'm the guy that they're like, what's in that mountain range over there? Well, let me tell you, even if I'm just creating it off the top of my head right at the moment. Yeah,
it's also very difficult to run a sandbox game online because of the pre-game preparation has to be a bit more thorough, especially if you play on something like Roll20, where they're expecting you to use tokens and maps that are pre-prepared. If you could do it all purely theatre of the mind in Discord, all well and good. But even playing theatre of the mind at the table, it's often easier to draw a sketch of something to show to help a description, or have a little board there just to quickly draw a quick layout to help them, because it can really remove any sense of confusion that can be there. And
there's never not a world map in any of my homebrew games too, so I've always got one that whether it's hand drawn or done with.
And I'll admit, most of my online games are a little more linear, and I suppose that's why I tend to. I prefer running games like Call of Cthulhu online because of the more story-based nature of it, and the more confined. It's not always always utterly linear, but it's a little more confined, a little more constrained. So I
mean the basic. Well, almost the other thing too. Almost all Call of Cthulhu is a mystery, and mysteries are pretty linear. I mean, you've got a specific goal, and you know.
That's what's so good about the scenario Forget Me Not is it isn't linear, but there's still certain things for them to find. They can just find it in any order.
Yeah,
and there's multiple ways of dealing with it.
Well, and I guess any mysteries like that. I mean, the clues can be generally found in any order unless a clue is revealed by another clue. But
there are a lot of Call of Cthulhu adventures which are sort of, here's a scene, here's what you can find there, here's what they move on to next. There's a lot that have been. Generally, the best ones aren't, but a lot of them are done like that.
And it's hard not to whenever it's an investigative aspect.
Yes.
Whereas whenever you're in an adventure, if the players miss the clue, as long that I wanted them to go find out where this is. Well, if the players decide, like you were talking about the mountains, let me go find out the mountains, whatever over there. You're like, well, I can always put whatever I had planned behind the scenes, or I can let something still go beneath the, but.
I'm not a fan of the Quantum Ogre, but I will always find a way to get information is easy to get in the way of the players, or I'll find another way. Like, I won't necessarily move an encounter. It feels cheap to me. That's a me thing. Not dissing anybody who does that, but I will find another way to make it relevant. Like, if you don't go, investigate the disappearances in the Northlands. Okay, well, then that will come back to haunt you.
Yeah,
or somebody will come along and tell you what's going on, and kind of deepen the stakes there.
But I don't mind that the players missed that part or whatever. You heard about the princess got kidnapped, and the players said, well, you know what? We don't really want to deal with that princess kidnapping. We'll go over this way, and then you start. But you can incorporate that into the game where it will impact it one way or the other, where they investigate it down. But for Call of Cthulhu, and this is the problem. This is why I've probably always stayed away from doing it. Is it's like the Maltese Falcon or anything else in these detective shows. If they don't find that clue, then how do they go forward? And how does this move through there? And I can understand that. And I want a little sandboxy where you can find stuff by interrogating people. Like, okay, instead of the bartender, maybe you just find the lady of the night standing on the corner, and she can give you the same information. I'm okay with that. It's not truly a quantum ogre aspect, but it gives you something to move forward. I'll modify a little bit so they know where to start looking.
I tend to use the 3 clue aspect a lot, where any given location is gonna that they're investigating is gonna have 3 different clues associated with it. So.
But it's like a trail of breadcrumbs. They have to start on the trail. If they miss the trail of breadcrumbs, then it missed the whole thing. And I think sometimes that's what. But I don't mind if it's. How do I want to put this? If it's linear without being railroady, like if you don't go over here, I'm going to punish you, is very different than just simply saying, okay, I'll have to figure out another way of dropping a clue somewhere else. And that allows them to move forward. That's a bit different. So the players still feel like they have a chance instead of saying, "Oh, you didn't go here. Guess what? 4 guys show up. They beat you up and they push you back over to where right where you are." Like, no, that's not as.
It's for me. It's just a when I run Call of Cthulhu, especially, it's just a matter of being agile and just knowing. I'm kind of a front load DM. I don't like pre-write things, but I kind of develop the whole concept of something. So when the players do go left, and the obvious way to go was right, my brain can immediately go, okay, this is what's going to be left. I may do a lot of for like in fantasy games. I'll do a lot of lore and background and world building, but I don't lore dump on my players. I just have it there, so I know it helps me inform my improv.
And you can drop little bits and pieces when they're appropriate.
Yeah, and like most fantasy authors, my notebook may be full of a lot of ideas, but until it actually appears in the campaign, it's not set. So I may have all the bandits in the north are backed by an ogre who is pulling the strings. If the game goes a different direction, until I've pulled out the ogre doesn't exist, kind of a thing. Like his concept may change. The fact that there's something controlling the things in the north, even if I originally just noted it down as there's an ogre, maybe the ogre, by the time I get around to having the reveal, I'm tired of the ogre idea,
or maybe the players have a better idea, and you're like, you know what?
I have been known to do that.
You came up with a better idea? We'll just go with that.
Players are often their own worst enemies.
I also love when they go on tangents in investigative games. Like if I'm, one of the worst things that can happen to you in Call of Cthulhu is they find the mysterious death and then they just call the cops, and then leave it to the cops. Oh, well, somebody was murdered. All right, well, I'm going to call the police, and then you're like, okay, now we're on a whole different investigation at this point.
One of the guys in chat at the moment, General Nut, when that group with Mage's Musings and a few others were playing the current Call of Cthulhu scenario, they went off and spent quite a long period in a town that's just not detailed in the adventure at all, and had me completely improvising and making up whole swathes of the adventure. It's call the cops exactly the first thing he did. I didn't want the cop to be the first person who showed up because it would.
I did a museum-based scenario for Call of Cthulhu where there was, and the players latched on to the wrong thing, and we spent so many sessions with them investigating this angle that was absolutely in the opposite direction. They're like, something must have been stolen. They were smuggling things out of the museum, and in reality, they weren't smuggling things out of the museum. They were smuggling things into the museum and concealing them to use in the museum.
Well, I mean, what was he? What was Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. Old man moment. Complete old man moment. Whatever you were saying, keep going with it. Whatever you were saying.
Oh no, I was
sorry,
done.
Oh God.
But I mean, in an ideal world, and I think sometimes this is as a DM, I want the players to come up with ideas that they go through and tell me where they want to go explore. And to be fair, do that at the end of the session. Like, you know what, we've cleared out this dungeon or whatever. You know what? Let's go explore the mountains over here. Okay. Thanks, guys. That's where you go to next, and that's what I'll deal with, and then I can create rumors and everything else behind the scenes. But I think that comes back down to your players need to know that you want them to give something. All too often, I find the bump on the log, like where they walk in, like, okay, what adventure are we playing?
I remember what I was going to say. There was players going off on tangents or not doing what you want them to. And this was my own really stupid fault. I can't remember which adventure it was we were playing. It was a pre-written Call of Cthulhu one. And I completely didn't take into account that they'd all created good law-abiding citizens as their characters. And I simply dropped the off-the-cuff comment from a police officer. You're all suspects in the murder. Don't leave town.
You're all persons of interest.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that would be the first thing I would say that the cops show up. It's like, well, you guys are somehow connected to this because you called it in, so you're either witnesses or you're criminals with a guilty conscience. So,
well, with me saying don't leave town is they'd found a big clue and the address of an asylum where they could meet someone who'd got a lot of information that was 50 odd miles away.
Oh no. Yeah.
And they didn't go because they had been told not to leave town. So they missed all the information and completely failed. And it's just because I just had thrown that little bit, just an off-the-cuff comment. It's the sort of thing a police officer would say, don't leave town.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it meant something. And it was just a little bit of role play. That's all it was.
I'm very happy that my Call of Cthulhu players have created good NPCs into their background that really help me filter information to them. I didn't have to do anything. They built it for me. One guy's got an old grumpy detective who's seen way too much weird stuff on the local police department. So I can use him, and his then got a background as a newsman. He was fired from legitimate news, and then my wife's character is a fortune teller who has high-profile clients who often come to her about other things that are beyond just speaking to their dead father. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce, guys. We'll see you.
All right, see you later.
Well,
Be sure to speak badly about me when I'm gone.
Well, there's not going to be a lot left. I'm going to have to apologise to Dungeon Crawling Hobo because you have arrived at 7 minutes past midnight my time, which is
bye.
Later. Geek's got to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah, we're at the time where I do turn into a pumpkin. But there was one other thing. It's time I get forgetful. My various medicines. Off.
Well, I'll have to try your Call of Cthulhu. I have to know what the character sheet is at some point. For that.
For Saturday, have a blank modern character sheet. I've posted a copy of it in the Discord a little further up.
Okay.
You don't know anything about your character.
All right. Well, that works.
That's how it's supposed to be.
I'm okay with that, actually. One of the things I've always looked at some players, especially if they're new to a system, is as you go through, you just tell me what skills you need, and we'll just fill it in until you're full. That way, they never feel like I didn't have anything useful. Okay.
This is all part of the scenario, so
sure. No, I'm okay with that. That makes it easy for me.
So you have to do no preparation other than print out that copy of that character sheet.
Oh, okay.
And that's it. Just have a pencil, and you can use your own dice, or you can use the dice roller, or whatever, and we'll get started. But I am gonna. Yeah, Halakha, you should join in sometime.
I
Thanks,
just wish
General.
you guys played at a
Enjoy
time I could play.
Well, what time can you play?
Most of the week I'm busy, so you guys play in the middle and aren't you playing on Thursdays?
This one's on a Saturday.
Yeah, I work
but
Saturdays.
Oh, okay.
There is coming up. I know a lot of people play games on Sundays, and I've not been able to for a very long time because of work. But the pub that I run a pub quiz in on a Sunday night is closing for a refurbishment for 5 weeks. So I've got 5 Sundays free coming up, Sunday evenings.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, I have Monday through Tuesday off. Oh no, excuse me, Sunday through Tuesday off. And then I have Monday nights is my game. So
yeah, I mean, so we could try and arrange something for a Sunday night to have a game.
cool.
And I am planning some more Call of Cthulhu videos for the very near future. I want to do a little one on how various groups have approached the Forget-Me-Not scenario, and I want to do a few more reviews, even though they don't get very many hits at all. But I want to review a few more scenarios that I've done.
Just put 5e in the title, like running Call of Cthulhu scenarios versus 5e. And
I hate saying this, but when I search and it makes it awfully hard when I type the exact same thing and they're like, I don't want to see anything with 5e. It's
I was going to say, I mean, one of the ones I want to review is one of the other Call of Cthulhu sandbox scenarios that I've run in recent years, which is Mr. Corbett from the Mansions of Madness book, which it might be scandalous to say it's nowhere near as good as Forget-Me-Not. I know a lot of people like it, but it's a spoiler for my review that it's not going to be nearly as positive.
Well, that's okay.
Anyway,
it's either you or Seth Skorkowski, and that's about it for Call of Cthulhu.
Omen, I'll track down. There's a couple other good Call of Cthulhu ones that I've found that are worth watching. I'll see if I can get their addresses again and send them your way.
Okay, sure, that's fine.
One's this dude out of Ireland, so it's pretty cool.
I found a few Call of Cthulhu podcasts that were quite good. There was one that I was listening to a couple of years ago, and they were very good in the way they did it.
Well, not to drop the name again, but Seth Skorkowski also has a podcast.
Yes.
And they've got the Modern Mythos one, which is actually a pretty solid podcast.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
then again, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'll probably listen to Seth Skorkowski talk about anything.
He has proved time and time again he doesn't just talk the talk. He comes across as a very solid player and runner of GM games. So he's clearly he comes across as a decent guy who knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I've listened to it, but it seems perfect for it. And I know it's under Cypher System. Was the Old Gods of Appalachia? That one sounds interesting as well.
That was a interesting almost radio play. It's not a radio play, but it's done as a kind of a radio play. But it's good stuff.
I'm now dropping stuff all over the floor, so I am.
All right, good night.
All right, we'll let you go. You have a good night.
It's time for me to go to bed. So I want to say thank you to DK and Gingerbeard, who've both come and gone, and as always, Elfbait and Omen Owl for their worthwhile contributions to the discussion. Thank you all once again for joining in, and everyone in chat who's joined in tonight. It's been good fun as always. Click like, and yeah, click a like on it, and click a dislike it. I don't care. If you haven't subscribed, do it. Anyway, cheers all. Thank you all for joining in. Thanks for making it another good discussion. Good night.
Have a good one.